Hello, today is May 20th, 2020. Our 7:30 meeting is about to begin for the Board of Supervisors. If you'd like to call in today for any comment, you can dial 646-558-8656 with meeting ID 880-4953-8984. This will also be displayed on your screen throughout the meeting. If you'd like to call in, please be sure to call in at the beginning of the agenda item or call in early. There is a slight delay on the internet, but it is in real time on your television. We look forward to a great meeting, and Fred, take it away.
Thank you, Monica, and welcome to this remote meeting of the Board of Supervisors. It's May 20th, 2020. I will now call the meeting to order and hope that everyone can now join me in the recital of the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty
and justice for all.
Thank you. I will now call the roll. Supervisor Blundy?
Here.
Supervisor Grenier?
Here.
Supervisor Lewis?
Here.
Supervisor McCartney?
Here.
And I am here. We have a quorum. Kurt, can you give us our latest COVID update?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Weiss. We continue to progress under the same conditions that we had at the last meeting. Here and under Park and Rec, you'll hear our Park and Rec Director, Monica Tierney, provide an update regarding what I know has been of interest to supervisors in the town regarding how we will reopen our parks and facilities. However, for the township and the township building, we are continuing to work remotely. There's been a lot of discussion if Bucks County moves to phase yellow here the first week of June. If that is the case, we will continue to work remotely as the parameters or the suggestions in the yellow phase outline. However, we are taking measures now in anticipation that we'll be back soon regarding the safety of our residents and staff, as far as the shifts that they'll come back to, the protections that we will offer to people coming into the building, and all of the details that we'll have to keep people safe. We did install plexiglass in the building now while we're closed, in the main administrative building, as well as the tax office, for when things are open back up for everyone's protection. And we'll continue to do that while we're closed. So when the time comes that people can come back, we'll have everything in place. Under my manager's report, I will be going over the revenue items or revenue categories in our budget for 2020 that we're watching closely as far as any impact with COVID that's happening. And we'll hear from Monica here shortly, but unless there's any questions, that's all I have with that.
Thank you, Mr. Ferguson. Public announcements. Park and Recreation, digital recreation opportunities are still out there, and you can find details by going to the township website, lmt.org/government/departments/parks-recreation. Also, we have another community announcement. The PennDOT District 6 Middle School Safety Drawing Contest for 2020. Supervisor Blundy, can you give us some more detail on that?
Sure. It's open to all Bucks County students in 5th through 8th grade. The theme this year is bike safety, and entries are due on June 12th. 8.5 by 11 is the size of the drawing that you can submit. And for further information, you can go to the PennDOT website, PennDOT/bike-safety, or contact by email Rob Briggs, ROBBRIGGS @pa.gov. So I know people are looking for projects for their kids. Here's a great one.
Thank you, Supervisor Blundy. Any other of the supervisors have any announcements, community announcements? Hearing none, we'll move on. Consider the approval of minutes of May 6, 2020.
Make a motion to approve the minutes from May 6th, 2020.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of passing the minutes signify by saying aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ayes have it. Minutes are approved. Treasurer's report. Supervisor Blondie.
Hi, I'd like to make a motion to consider approval of the warrants list from April 20th, May 4th, and May 18th, all 2020, in the amount of $1,057,011.
Do we hear a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Public comment? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it. Bills can be paid. Anything else, Ms. Blondie?
I'd like to make a motion to consider approval of the Interfund transfers for the month of April in the amount of $621,402.46.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Second by, we'll make Supervisor Grenier for the second on that one. Any discussion? Public comment?
Just have to check. No public comment.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Raise your hand.
Aye.
Ayes have it, 5-0. Thank you. Going on, engineers report, Mr. Pockel.
Yes, Supervisors, you have in your packet my engineer's report dated May 14th. I have no specific agenda items. However, there are a few updates that I'd like to bring you up to speed on. For one, the Township Road Program is underway. The contractor started today. He milled the surface of Hecock Road, and they are planning on, weather permitting, paving that, installing the loop detectors tomorrow, and then paving it on Friday and line striping it on Friday. So then after that, they'll be moving over to Rose Hollow Drive and Thrush Court, and they are continuing to complete inlet repairs and ADA ramp upgrades where necessary. So that work has begun. The MS4 program, after the Planning Commission meeting last night, we gave a public education presentation. It was about a half an hour on homeowner helpful hints to homeowners on how they can improve both stormwater quality and quantity, or reduce the runoff off of their property. And I believe that the township is going to put that up on their website. So if anybody wants to review that, they can, if they missed the presentation last night. And that presentation is part of our ongoing MS4 permit, the township storm sewer permit. It's a requirement that is made by DEP for public education and outreach. Laurel Lane, the outfall repairs, if you remember, that project was mostly completed last fall. The contractor needs to return in the spring to take care of any erosion problems that occurred over the winter, reseed to make sure that the grass is stabilized, and then also pave Dr. Garber's driveway as they use that for site access. And so I spoke with the contractor. They'll be returning tomorrow to complete the overseeding, and then we'll be paving his driveway on Friday. Sandy Run intersection improvements, we are scheduled to complete the field work for the survey next Tuesday, starting next Tuesday. I spoke with Jim Majewski on that, and he is going to meet the crew on site to make sure that we have the scope of what needs to be captured and sent to the design engineer. Just make sure we're on the same page with that. The bike path reconstruction, or bike path maintenance program. We drafted the contracts and sent them to Polaris Construction last Friday. Polaris has sent us their product submittals. We're in the process of reviewing it. I think the only thing that we rejected was the joint compound that they were going to put in the cracks. And so that wasn't PennDOT compliant, so we rejected that. Once we get the contracts back from Polaris, then we'll forward the township and try to get that started as soon as possible. Moving on to development projects, PA American Water has both the Quarry Road Booster Pump Station. We reviewed a revised submission on May 15th and had no further comments. And then also PA American Water had Edgewood Road Water Treatment Facility. Last night, we had reviewed that in the end of April, and last night recommended approval to the Planning Commission last night, 5/19. Moving on to construction, our landscape architect went out to several developments and reviewed the plantings to make sure that most of them survived the winter before releasing the performance bond on some of the developments that were scheduled to be closed out. We issued the report to the developer, so we're in contact with them on when they're going to complete those plantings. And then following up on a discussion that we had at the last meeting, Scammell's Corner, we've met both Rich Krasselt with the Bucks County Conservation District. And again, he reiterated that, he agreed that, yes, that's not acceptable, what was the rain garden that was planted in the middle of the roundabout, or a cul-de-sac, if you will. But he will not accept any kind of reduction in that BMP. So we met with the developer. They seem to be receptive to some of the homeowners' suggestions as far as putting in pervious pavers around the edge of it to eliminate the potential for somebody driving off the edge or driving into the rain garden. And then also putting in some type of underground stone seepage bed that would take the runoff and then do some additional plantings on top. So they're receptive to it. They're going to provide a plan to us for review. We'll send it to the homeowners, and then we'll send it to the Conservation District for their review and approval. And once we receive that, we'll get it implemented.
Andy, can I ask you a question about that meeting?
Sure.
So when we, I think some of the supervisors saw some photos of the rain garden and some of the other BMPs in the area. When you did your site walkthrough with Rich Krasselt from the Conservation District, did he only call out the rain garden as being an issue, or were there other parts of the entire stormwater management system that may have had issues? When I was looking at it myself, I noticed that the stormwater management basin to the, I believe, the southwest of the rain garden, I might be turned around a little bit, but the large stormwater management basin, at least from the aerial, didn't appear to be draining. So I'm wondering if there are any other BMPs in that overall system that needed any remediation.
There is some additional work that needs to be done, and Rich Krasselt has recognized that based on multiple meetings that we've had kind of going back to last year. So the rain garden within the middle of the cul-de-sac is not the only issue that needs to be addressed prior to the developer receiving a notice of termination.
Okay. And other than the county conservation district, will this involve is DEP delegating that to the county, or is DEP getting involved too?
At this point, the DEP is still delegating that to Rich Krasselt in the Bucks County Conservation District.
Okay, thanks for the update.
So that's all I had.
Any other discussion, questions to Mr. Puckle?
Fred, one other quick one on the road program. I've been getting some questions, and obviously they're different from our road program, but just to highlight, Big Oak Road is a state road, not a township road, so it's not a township's responsibility to pave. However, it is clearly on our radar that there's an issue there. And Kurt, you might be able to chime in here, but I do know that our Public Works Director is trying to coordinate closely with PennDOT District 6 to look at that potential schedule. And I do believe their goal is to do it this summer, but with COVID the way it is, I think it might get pushed out till next year, but I don't know that for a fact. But I just wanted people watching to know that, yes, PennDOT is looking at Big Oak Road, and the township is trying to coordinate with them as best possible so that we know when that's going to happen.
They did communicate with us that they believe that from the timing of their contract to when they would presumably give a notice to proceed, that their goal would be to be in that project area, which isn't just Big Oak, but to have that underway in August. So we'll make sure that as we get word about that, especially if they are going to pave and there's going to be some impact, that we'll get that posted on our website and on our Facebook page to alert people.
Thanks, Kurt.
And real quickly, we have a map of which ones are state roads versus which ones are LMT roads. And I always urge people when they have questions to go take a look at that. Maps online. But and in general, by the way, PennDOT has been very responsive in the last couple of years and very helpful. So I'm hopeful we'll get some traction here as well. They've been really good to work with lately. So.
Andy, real quick, I just have a question for the Scammell's Corner folks. Do you have a timeline for those guys?
I think in discussing it with them, they want to get it done as quickly as possible as well. In fact, they said that they could go out there and address some of the other items while we're waiting on the rain garden repairs or the sketch plan to be submitted and reviewed. So I guess their only trepidation in all of that would be they don't want to go make repairs and then have somebody drive through it and then keep going out there to fix it. But if the township gives them the go ahead, then we can order them to basically do everything else on site with the exception of the rain garden in the middle of the cul-de-sac and go from there. And so I fully expect that they could have that work completed within the next couple of weeks.
And Kurt, just to clarify, is there any reason that the township would be holding them back from doing that work?
No, I'll be honest with you. I think it would be wise for us as a staff to sit and to weigh out any pros and cons, if there are any cons, from holding them back. So as far as I'm concerned, if it would be the engineer and Mr. Majewski, who's the planning and zoning director, feel that it's wise to move quickly, then I don't know a reason we'd hold them back from doing the other things that they need to do.
Okay, thanks.
Any other comments? Any public comment, Monica?
No public comment on this.
Fantastic. Let's go to the next item then. Item number 9, Park and Recreation COVID-19 Recovery and Reconnection Plan. So who's going to take lead on this, Monica or Mr. Ferguson?
I'll take the lead. Fred, are you okay on the agenda? It has the reconnection plan first and the camp second. Are you okay if I rearrange that and do camp first?
It's your show.
Okay. Thank you so much. I feel it runs smoother if I do that. My recommendation this year is that we cancel Camp LMT as it is. This is because we can't offer camp as it is. We can't offer what people signed up for. So I think the smart thing to do would be to cancel Camp LMT. So it is my recommendation that we do cancel Camp LMT this year. I am looking at alternatives. I'm still waiting on some guidance on some things, but I'm looking to offer something for parents as they go back to work in a more flexible way under the guidance and under the recommendations of the CDC, the county, the state, everybody, to come up with something that's very safe even starting in the yellow phase, so we can help parents as they go back to work, but it wouldn't be a standard summer camp that they would experience at Camp LMT. So I guess I would ask if the board supports the cancellation of camp.
Any comments from the board?
Monica, quick, could you just describe for folks that aren't aware, very briefly, what Camp LMT is?
Sure.
What I think it's helpful.
Yeah, Camp LMT is a 60 camper camp run out of the community center for kids 6 to 12 years old. We're generally on pretty close quarters. We go to the pool every Friday. We go on trips every Wednesday, and then we do other smaller trips around the community, say to 5 Mile Woods. With that, we're on the bus a lot. We're traveling together on close quarters. I can't imagine a camp right now that we could go on any trip, or even if those facilities are open at this time. So I just don't think it'd be right to promise people one thing and only be able to offer what we can say the Pinto instead of the Mercedes, it says for camp this year. So I think the best thing for us to do is to cancel and come up with some sort of alternative for parents that are residents. So it's a true support versus the standard fun recreation camp that we offer. I'm hoping to still make it somewhat fun, but I don't think we can offer that this year.
I appreciate that, and I'm sure you'll come up with something to make it fun. You always do. Fred, are you looking for a motion, or do we just have a? How would you like to go forward?
Yeah, I think that I don't think we technically need a motion for this. However, just get consensus from the board to follow through with this. So if there's no objection, we'll let Monica do what she has to do. I think you have the authority to go forth as you see fit.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And then I'm just going to pull up my screen here. I'll share with you. I created a reintegration plan. So today I'm going to talk to you about how we plan to recover and reconnect as Parks and Recreation. Today I'll review the phases of the Governor Wolf's plan, and I'll talk about what that means for LMT at this time as we understand things. We know that things are changing always. So basically, this is Parks and Rec as we see it in the past. This year, this is what we were expecting to do. These are all the things that we do normally. Essentially, what we as Park and Recreation directors had to do was revamp everything to accommodate COVID-19. So as we go through these slides, we're starting from the bottom up framework as we go through things. Today I'll go faster through the red phase, and then we'll really hone in on the yellow phase because that's what's coming next. So as you look at this Governor Wolf's plan, as many of you have seen it online and everywhere else, essentially right now we're in the red phase. We are supposed to be staying at home, hanging out with our families. Restaurants are very limited. Travel is limited. There's a lot of things that are limited at this time. So this is where we are now. Last meeting, we talked about this. We opened Memorial Park for parking, walking, jogging, biking, and the gardens. That is going very well. We opened up Makefield Trails, but the parking is closed. That is also going very well at this time. Red phase programs, some of the things that we've added on are our senior phone calls, which are going very well. We can, people expect them at this point. We are offering online classes. We are looking at different potential online special events that we can offer, maybe a virtual 5K that we can offer at this time. The next thing, as we cancel camp, would be camp in a bag. So we're looking to do almost like a subscription service for camp where people can get about a week's worth of activities they can do at home, whether they're physical activities, science activities, crafts. The cool thing about this is Bucks County Park and Rec Council came together and the council will fund the bags for the camp. And we're all working together as Bucks County to offer this to our municipalities. So we'll have bags sponsored by the county council, and then we'll be able to stuff them with different activities. We're hoping to keep the bags under $25, and people will be able to participate in this in their home. And it'd be something we could do fun with them, that they could do an unboxing, or which is very trendy with the kids these days, unboxing, and or show their crafts to us online, and we can share those pictures and things. We're also starting to call local businesses and see ways that we can interconnect with them, help them out in this time, and see how they're operating. Maybe if they could help us a little bit with Camp in a Bag, if they want to have information about their business in Camp in a Bag, or if they have a craft that they like to include or something in Camp in a Bag 1 week. We're looking to theme them, make them different each week. So these are some of the things that we're looking to do here to help parents who are looking to keep their kids busy. We did do a survey of our camp families, and 88% of the families did say they did not want to do anything virtual. So this is kind of our response to that. I think parents are kind of over it when it comes to teaching their kids anything online at this time. So, and that seems to be the trend across all the municipalities as I talk to different directors. So for our staffing, Kurt touched on this a little bit too. We are still doing telework. Our maintenance is on-site mowing. We did start an intern program with Penn State. Penn State did reach out and said, we don't know what to do with these seniors. They need to graduate. We have some programs that we need specifically. One of them was risk management. We are trying to get accredited by CAPRA right now. And we do need a risk management plan specific to Parks and Recreation. So these interns are helping us with the framework for that. So we're meeting with them once a week right now, and they're working throughout the week on the project. Cost mitigation, we are not hiring our summer help. We do generally have 5 people we bring on at about approximately 30 hours a week just to mow. We are not hiring them. So our staff has been shifted in order to cover the mowing right now. And then we will not be hiring our full-time employee this year. So we are kind of working at a minimum. In the red phase, we're mowing, we're cleaning, we're landscaping. We're still continuing to move forward with the HVAC pool project. The 2020 bike path maintenance plan was approved last meeting. We will be doing the core boring as part of the feasibility study. And we're making some small modifications in the office at the community center to make it a little safer when we do open. On hold right now, Oxford Valley Bike Path Memorial Park project and the doors at the community center. Does anybody have any questions before I move on?
Monica, I don't know if you can see me here.
I can see.
Sorry. This is less about your plan and more about if you know the details. We have these phases that we're looking at, which generally are commonsensical, right? Moving along. Do we have any? Are we just going to be told what phase we're in? And if we are, do we know if it's based on just things that are in the news, like there's there's a vaccine, so let's go green. And I didn't mean to rhyme, that just happened that way. Or certain numbers are below certain thresholds, if that's going to move us to a phase. Do we have any indication of that yet? Or is that we're just going to follow state guidance?
Right now, we're following state guidance. When we go yellow, we'll be prepared to do what we need to do to open the facilities that we can open at this time. The one thing that we have to understand moving into the yellow phase is that a lot of the equipment that we need to stay safe is not available to us easily. So we do have to consider that as we do move forward, even bringing our staff back and such. So we do need, I just want you to keep that in mind. As we try to open up more things, we're going to need more safety equipment and that type of thing. So, but yeah, this is the governor's guidance. When the governor announces that we're going into yellow that day that we start yellow right now, this is the plan.
Thank you for that.
Mhm. And also I want to let you know, today I'm not covering specifics of how the logistics will work in each different scenario because there's so many and we would be here all day and all night. I do plan to put that out on our website, how we, what kind of things that you can do to protect yourself, what to consider when you're going to play, that type of thing. But it's not going to be presented tonight unless you have a specific question.
Okay. And very high level, I'm sure you're doing this anyway, but with Chief as our emergency management coordinator, I'm sure you're coordinating closely with Chief for implementation and whatnot. Correct?
Yes, Chief reviewed this before I presented it today, or even, finished. He saw the draft version. So yeah, we've been coordinating. So as we move into the yellow phase, the facilities that we feel based on the governor's guidance and guidance given by a lot of the different park professionals would be to do this. So we're looking to open, you can see bolded, it is what is new in this. Makefield, the parking will be open. The dog park will open. It might not open right on the first day as we have to go through everybody's account and make sure all the shots are up to date. We're starting to do that a little bit now. 5 Mile Woods will open, tennis and pickleball will open, and bocce will also open. So these are the facilities that we look to open at that time. For programs, we've been looking at drive-in movies. Again, the BCRC, Bucks County Park and Rec Council, is trying to work together to create a schedule for drive-in movies throughout the county so people have touches all around the county. Right now, it looks like the first one will be at, well, I might be saying this a little too early, but I'm hoping that the first one will be at the Oxford Valley Mall. And then after that, maybe we'll do one here. I'm hoping to do this. I think the best site right now would be Memorial Park and the east side that is undeveloped at this time. And then we have to work out logistics about cars and work with the chief closely on this one too. Also, Bucks County, I've been in touch with the Department of Health of Bucks County. They are willing to review any of our plans and kind of give us guidance along the way. So as we move forward, having that connection has been very nice. The next thing I talked to you a little bit today is Camp Essentials. So we're looking to run a break-even camp where it's going to be all outdoor, limited groups that are all together all the time, following the guidance of, the CDC, Camp, I think it's Camp America, the state and the county on this one. Also, these plans I'll have reviewed by the county health department also, so they can review. And again, we'll continue with that full feasibility study until it's done. Still, our closures are this, we have 5 Mile Woods programs, all in-person classes, senior programs, all leagues, and Camp LNT would be canceled. I imagine in the yellow phase, we may do some staggered reentry, particularly if we are starting some camp. We really will have to do some significant training for our staff. We'd have to have some wavering in the way of offering programs. Our interns will continue to telework and our maintenance staff will continue to be on site. And this is the same as the last slide. So does anybody have questions following the yellow phase?
Monica, just to be clear here, so, one of the things that we've talked about that we've repurposed some rec staff on is calling these 300 plus households, senior households, through the partnership program created by Chief Paluzzi and the police department. In the yellow phase, then we would continue to call those houses and continue, even if we need to pull that staff to do some other things that you've talked about, but to continue that on through the yellow phase, correct?
Yes, even into the green phase. I think it would be great to continue to call the seniors. And as we move forward into the green phase part of the presentation, I want you to understand that this is the phase that we really know the least about. And we're still getting guidance on this. But based on what we see now, I'm going to present what I believe would be open at that time. So we're looking at the opening of Memorial Park, Makefield Park, Dog Park, 5 Mile Woods, Community Center, Fred Allen, Keola Stoddard, community park, tennis, basketball, volleyball, playgrounds, pavilion, and pavilion rentals. Still closed in 2020 is the pool, and still closed initially in the green phase would be the programs, the rentals, and the senior programming. It would be very limited. So as we move into this, all 5 Mile Woods programs and some in-person classes would come back. Our leagues would come back, but at very limited. From what I'm looking at, it'd still be limited in size in the way that they can operate. And then we'll have on-site and some telework where needed. Maintenance staff will be on-site, and our interns will still telework, but hopefully be able to do a site visit. So this is the same, I believe. Oh, the community center will start real deep cleaning on a very regular basis for the community center. Right now, it's closed, and our staff has been allocated elsewhere. And then what Park and Rec is calling it a phase out. So when we're no longer in phase, we're back to normal, would be after the green phase. So that's kind of going through all the phases. The next thing to consider too are some of the events that are coming up here in the community in the very near future. Pennsbury tournament is coming up. The organizer changed it to August 5th through 9th. I've been in touch with Les, the organizer. We've had very nice conversations about how this potentially could be somewhat modified, if it will be able to offer, if he'll be able to offer it at all, if people will even be able to travel, or if we want people to travel to Lower Makefield Township at this time. So I think that's a consideration that we really have to look into. We're looking to move the food truck event. The recommended date would be October 17th at this point. The decide by for that is, today, if we could. And Community Day, we still have to decide by July 1st. Right now, I don't see that as very promising. We might be able to do a little something, but I definitely don't think it'd look like what Community Day ordinary looks like. 9/11 Memorial is something that we're going to have to look at how we operate 9/11 Memorial, or, what state we'll be in at that time. Mostly the night memorial is very vast. There's a lot of people who come to that. It's a Friday night, so we really need to consider that. Veterans Day Parade, how will we offer that? What will that look like? And the Family Fun Night. So those are the things, the decide things that we have to do coming up here soon. And then I just wanted to share my resources with you. I've done a lot of research and spent a lot of time on the phone with colleagues, trying to make things, pull things together and have everybody work together. And I just want to let you know that I did put a lot of consideration into this. And it's important to me to get everybody back. And there's nothing more than I would like to see everybody back to normal. So if you guys have any questions, I'd be glad to answer.
Yeah, if I could, just more of a general comment. I think this is very comprehensive, and I'm very much in support of how you've structured this and sort of the trade-offs on stuff. And I'm pleased that some of the stuff's going to be coming online on the yellow phase. And obviously, this is a difficult time, so I'm very much appreciative of your work on it. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll echo that, Monica. You put a lot of thought into this, and I know it's not easy trying to line things up with different phases and trying to understand what those phases mean, because I think it requires a lot of flexibility, which I know it keeps you on your toes all the time, which I know you're more than able to do. So anything we can do to support you, get you more info, get the word out on certain things, please let us know. But this, I think, is a very comprehensive approach, and job well done. Hopefully we can get through all these phases pretty quicker than 18 months or whatever we're currently hearing on certain things, so we can move forward.
Thank you.
Monica, can I ask you a question? Sure. How does this line up as far as the yellow phase and how you're staging this with what you hear neighboring municipalities are doing in terms of like what you're talking about, reintegrating as far as being open in the yellow phase?
Sure. I have been on the phone with a lot of the directors almost daily. We have been meeting almost weekly as Bucks County Council just to kind of see what, the next person is doing. I think one of the biggest things for us is that we all kind of lined together so that one of us doesn't open and we get inundated by everybody traveling to that certain municipality, that we want to kind of line up together. For the most part, we are completely in line. I know Falls Township just closed their camp and their pool. So there are some things that we operate differently than other townships, but for the most part, you can see that we're pretty close in line. Actually, some of the townships even used my slides and adapted them to their their township. So I can say that we're pretty much in cohesion.
Hey, Monica, great job. I want to say even like just a tiny little thing. I think it's great that you're trying to move forward on internships.
Mhm.
I know so many kids in college, life interrupted, and anything we can do to help the normalcy is fantastic. Just to give you more to think about, I'm so touched by the work that your team and Chief, your team is doing with the elderly and the other people in our community. And I'd love to talk about how we can keep that going, maybe even after all of this, and maybe make it a volunteer opportunity for some people in the township who may have become more aware of those in our community who are in need.
Thank you, Suzanne. I agree. This is a great program.
I'd just like to chime in also, Monica, how well you guys did this preparation. And I know we have Park and Rec Board has looked at this and has approved it wholeheartedly. And I'm glad to see that we have a plan and it's coordinated with other municipalities in the county. I really appreciate what you've done.
If I could pull back for the board real quick, Monica did have a slide in there, and I just want to make sure we don't forget it, about is it the food truck event that you were going to do, Monica?
Yes.
That you were making the point that sort of to get this repurposed for an October date, that, that whether or not the board wants to weigh in to make a decision, or that you're at least clear, as far as changing it from a date that's about 2.5 weeks away to something in October, to keep that possibly viable as a fun event for people, but to move that to October 17th.
And that's not Columbus Day, right? Columbus Day is the weekend before.
I think it is.
Because we know we have a big soccer tournament Columbus Day weekend.
Did they cancel that, Suzanne?
Not Columbus Cup. They canceled their Epic
Oh,
tournament.
the Epic tournament. My
Mhm.
bad.
Yeah. I'll double check right now.
Columbus Day is October 12th.
Okay, thank you.
So, Monica, if we say tonight, yeah, go ahead and move, modify it to October 17th, as just a placeholder. Is that a hard date where it has to happen, or is that a placeholder date? How do you feel about that?
Well, I kind of feel like everything is a placeholder date these days.
That's why I
we don't
asked.
know what to expect. Just like the Pennsbury tournament was moved to August. We don't even know if August was, good enough. I feel like until we have some kind of solution to this epidemic, we're really going to keep doing this. It's unfortunate, but that's the sad facts.
Yeah.
think-
Okay.
I think
go ahead,
we
sorry.
made a motion to have the event, if I remember correctly, for the 6th of June.
Yeah, we did have a motion, or you did have a motion for June 6th. Yes.
Yeah, so before we continue, I'll entertain a motion to postpone the food truck event to October 17th.
So moved.
Hear a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay. Mr. Lewis will be the credit for the second one, this one. And any further discussion?
Yeah, I was just checking. It doesn't seem like there's a harvest day date on it says 128 days from now. It doesn't say the actual date on their website, because I don't want to make sure we're not conflicting with harvest day at all. But it doesn't say the date, so I'm assuming we're okay.
It is, John, how many days away does it say it is?
128.
That would put it in like late September.
Okay, then we're fine then. Okay, I'm good.
Any community public comment on this, Monica?
No public comment.
Hearing no further comment, all those in favor, signify by saying aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Next item of business will be project updates. Before you have a summary of the projects that the township is underway and little notes. Any questions or further updates on these projects?
I'm sorry.
Mr. Lewis.
Yeah, on the Sandy Run word project, we've awarded the RFP. Are we still on track to completing the project for the end of the year?
You're muted, Kurt.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now? It did get pushed back a few weeks, John. So, I think that still is the goal. Seeing that, I think we can move quickly. We have the plan down. I still, we had a generous time as far as gaps between things that we could work to tighten up. So I think we had the goal set that like it would be wrapped up in November. There's no reason, if the weather's is decent, that it couldn't extend even farther than that. So that still is the plan.
Excellent. And then on the sewer projects, do we have an update on where we stand with those?
The sewer projects is outlined with the two pump station projects, Brookstone and Stackhouse, as well as the sewer lining is going to be presented to the sewer authority tomorrow night, with the goal of bringing that to the first June meeting of the board for consideration.
Thank you.
Any further comments from the board on project updates?
Kurt, for the first week in June, can we get an update on the 332 Mirror Lake signal?
Yes, that's through the Arley grant that we have. Our traffic engineer has been working on that and has been evaluating possibilities for that. So I think the goal will be, I hope Monica, there she is. Wow, she's on the move. Yes, so I'll work to have Joe Fiacco or Marie, who are the traffic engineers, provide a public update regarding where we are, in terms of getting that out to bid. They understand in the end, the goal is going to be to bring that all to all of you soon, to put the advertisement out. So we'll shoot for June 3rd if that's what the board would like.
Yeah, I'm not trying to put any artificial pressure on it. It just seems that it's been, plans submitted for a while, and maybe that's a COVID delay, which is totally understandable, but, whatever works makes sense to me.
Oh, good. Okay.
Kurt, on the multi-use trail, the note here is that the NIPD's permit was submitted to the Conservation District. I'm assuming that's just a calendar thing. We're waiting on that.
Yeah, that actually has been approved. I'm sorry, I needed.
Oh, even better. Good. So when would that, and if I missed it from Andy's report, I apologize, but when would that start off then, since we have that approval? And you're still on mute, by the way.
Sorry, that's not Andy's project.
Okay.
That's TPD's project.
Oh,
You have two resolutions for under my manager's report to basically authorize me as far as the various executions for traffic-related items. It has been our intention to bring TPD in either in the first or second meeting in June to give a full updated project update with more specific details regarding stormwater and all of the things we've worked on as a staff prior to going out to bid to answer all those questions of the board.
Very big picture, when do you foresee going out to bid and construction starting, just from a very high level, like quarter, and you can go by third quarter, whatever, not even a month, just curious.
I think the goal is to get underway later in the year, and it'll probably, the construction would spill over into the spring as well.
Okay, thanks.
You want me to keep going there, Fred, into my bed?
Before we continue on, just Monica, is there any public comment on this?
No public comment.
Very good. Okay, Kurt, go ahead.
Okay, first though, before I get to my items, I do want to say something, and that's just for you all to realize, and I know you recognize this, but I think I want to make sure I say it, that, Monica has done such outstanding work, and, she's been the park and rec director here for a few years, and she already is one of the go-to people in the county regarding being a resource for other departments to reach out to her, specifically like items like this, because she's always thinking. So, just so you're aware, when Monica texts me at 6:30 in the morning because she's got this fantastic idea on reopening, it's a good thing she's always thinking. I have to try to get her to rest once in a while because she's always thinking about these things. So I'm very appreciative that she's here. I have managers calling me as well, asking what we're doing, understanding that Monica has been very thorough in her reviews of these things. So the fact that I can tell you what the tennis restrictions are on the courts as put together by tennis groups is, I guess that's a good thing, but it's because of Monica. So I appreciate all her work.
Thank you, Kurt.
No problem. You can buy me breakfast tomorrow. Just joking. So there's two items on there. I asked Mr. Majewski to write you all a memo regarding these two resolutions. This basically will allow, the resolution will allow me to sign all of the traffic signal approval applications as part of this project. Now, even though I had indicated that we're going to have the consultant come and do a presentation, we have really thought, one of the things I'm very happy with this multi-use trail is we've turned this into an exercise that all department heads are involved with. So as an example, when we pick this project up, sitting around the table with us is not just TPD, who's the engineer who's been designing this, but it's been the police chief, it's been the traffic employee with the police department, the planning director, the public works director, myself. So as an example, and I think I talked about this many months ago, when you all get this presentation, you're going to see things as an example that we've talked. And if you see this resolution for a new flashing beacon at Oxford Valley Road and Roloffs Road. One of the things that we've talked about is putting a crosswalk there. And one of the changes that we made in the plan from what you all probably originally saw as a tentative plan, understanding some of the concerns that we have in the community with children and being safe, is that we've put a sensor. So if you're all familiar, when you go to areas where there's around Bucks County, let's say, and the courthouse where those flashing beacons go that people are crossing, we're going to do that by an automatic sensor, which is to be presented to all of you, which would mean in the event that a kid was not paying attention and rode his bike through the crosswalk, it'll automatically go off. So drivers would be aware that there's someone in that crosswalk. So it's one of the improvements that we're looking at that will be presented to all of you. But that first resolution that we're asking for consideration is just to allow me, when the time comes, to be the authorized person to execute these things as part of the application that we need to put in, as outlined in the memo that Mr. Majewski sent to all of you yesterday. So I'm not sure if the board wants to approve that or not.
Let's consider a motion to approve resolution 2417, authorizing the execution. Anybody?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second, second, sir.
Second by Mr. Brunel.
So Fred, if you don't mind, if I will, let me just do this. So just in case the public's sitting there wondering, so let's just talk about the resolution. Resolution 2417 does pertain to the proposed new flashing beacon for the pedestrian crossing at the intersection of Oxford Valley Road and Roloffs Road, where the park driveway is. The crossing will be located at the southwest side of the intersection and include accessible curb ramps, utilize accessible pedestrian signals or APS, passive detection thermal cameras, and warning striping. So again, this will be presented to all of the board. The resolution, if you all decide you don't want to do that, doesn't predetermine that you have to. This is just part of the application process. So we're ready if and when the board approves.
Fred's muted. Can I ask you a question on that? Kurt, if we didn't have this resolution, can you explain to us what process we would have to go through the approvals and sign everything, et cetera? What the other approach would be?
Well, I don't know. This is the only approach I'm aware of with these processes. I mean, typically the board has to authorize a signer. Mm-hmm. So in the end, it would just be, the other approach would be you want someone else to be the signer. Someone has to be authorized to execute. So this is all this does.
Good. That's very helpful.
I'm okay with you being the signer, James, just so you know.
I have a nicer signature.
Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Look at the nice glasses. I like that.
All right. Any other comment? And I don't think there's any public comment for this. Is there, Monica?
No public comment.
All those in favor of approval of resolution 2417 signify by saying aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Resolution is passed.
Along those same lines, Dr. Weiss, is resolution 2418. I'll do what I just did with the last one. So this pertains to the modification of the existing traffic signal at Edgewood Road and Oxford Valley Road. Modification will include an upgrade to the existing accessible curb ramps and an upgrade to the visual hand signals at the intersection. Again, these would be run through PennDOT as part of the project that would require those upgrades. And again, this will all be presented to all of you. And again, this is just authorization for me, if and when this is approved, to be the signer as they send these things back and forth for approval.
I entertain a motion for resolution 2418.
I move that the board approve resolution number 2418.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Ms. Blundy will be the second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of approval signify by saying aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it.
Thank you. I'll be quick with this next portion, but I'm willing to take questions as best as I can answer them on the fly if we need to. First, I will be providing all of you with updates regarding where we are with golf. As you'll recall, in my last financial update, which was about the first week of April, I had outlined to all of you sort of these numbers depending upon the days when we anticipated that we open. As has been reported, we opened on May 1st, where the projection would be that our year-end numbers would not be far off from what the actual budgeted numbers were anticipated to be. And the main reason from that was as we had more golfers earlier in the year than we normally would because the weather was a lot milder than it has been in the last few years. So with that May 1st opening date, we had anticipated a shortfall of about $283,000, which is not far off where we would have anticipated. However, the good news has been we've had good weather, and we've had robust participation with people interested in getting out to golf. Moving forward, I did carry some things over from my previous report, just as reminder information where we are with revenues. Again, the first part of numbers that I always start with is what was our fund balance number from what we projected last year at the end of the year as part of the 2020 budget, and where we ended up. So we ended up with our bottom line number about 2.5% better than the budget, which was about $353,000 better off than we'd anticipated. As I said back in April, Lower Makefield is in a much different situation than a lot of other municipalities that are having difficulty getting their hands around what their revenues are going to be, because they're driven much more by more volatile taxes of earned income tax. Here we have the good fortune of a predictable tax amount with property taxes that we can measure fairly specifically and have much less unknowns in terms of that. I will tell you as well that the Bucks County Consortium, the managers consortium that we're part of and that I participate in, as a group had made the decision to submit financial information to a group that they retained called ESI to assess the general level of threat of each of these towns in terms of the predictability of their revenue. I'm quite certain that we're going to come out on the low end of that scale. We provided for Lower Makefield, just like the other towns, we provided year-to-dates as of the end of April. We provided comparisons from previous years. I'm sure they'll be doing a lot of the same sort of trends that I do, but I think it'll be helpful to have fresh eyes on that. When we get that report, I'll make sure that that's available to the board. So if we start with what I will say is our more volatile tax of real estate transfer taxes, as I had presented in my report, we are actually ahead of where we were last year at this time. Last year at this time, just on raw numbers, we had sold 147. There were 147 property transfers through the end of April last year. We're at 161 this year through the end of April. Now, our revenue is ahead of where it was last year, but still under budgeted averages that we would need. But that would be expected regardless of what was going on. That is always the case, with May through August and September tending to be the most, the time that most people are selling their houses in and around when school starts and stops. Now, I don't think we're going to have a big May. We'll have to see where that lands us out with things, but we are continuing to see activity. I will continue presenting that to all of you. So just to give a number here, so you're aware that the budgeted average that we would need to hit our budgeted number, we budgeted $1,550,000 for 2020 transfers. That would bring with it a monthly average of about $129,000. We're currently at $97,000 a month. So we're about $125,000 below where we would be if you just broke it out over a 12-month period. However, if you look last year at this time, we were farther behind than that. So really what's going to, I'll say May, I would expect it to be a below average month, at least compared to previous Mays. But then June, July, and August, we'll have to see where things are to get a much better sense of where we are. Building permits, which we know can be unpredictable. We're right on our budgeted amount. April was a slower month, but we're picking back up since construction started. You're going to see those numbers continue to be very healthy. I see no impact on that amount, and that's not an inconsequential amount of money. We budgeted $791,000, represents about 6-7% of our revenue of the revenues that we have for the year. Our local service tax, which is the $52 people are charged for working in Lower Makefield. We're seeing surprising resiliency with that number, where we've not seen a big drop off through April, but we'll continue to monitor it. Our real estate transfer taxes. As you all are aware, the discount period ended April 30th. We've extended the period of face from June 30th to July 31st. So there may be some delay to see where we're at as people, understandably wait till the last minute to make that payment. But if you look from last year to this year, we had 11,265 households pay their property taxes as part of discount. This year it was 11,146. So a decrease of 119 households. Now, I suppose there could be any number of factors in that related to the current situation or not, but that translates to 90.5% of the budgeted revenue expectation for the year. We've collected over $10 million in property taxes this year. So, I'm not seeing anything that is raising alarms that somehow collections have dropped off, or that we're seeing something that we're going to have to take, at least for now, dramatic action. Our expenditures the same way. If I'm looking at our expenditures on the aggregate, from last year to this year, our expenditures, because we've taken different controlled measures, and this, we're just talking about the general fund, that last year at this time, the end of April, we were at $2,867,000 in expenditures in the general fund. This year we're at $2,561,000. So I've knocked off about $300,000 in expenditures year over year. And keep in mind, that includes in their payroll with people who are making a higher wage than they were last year. So we have really contained those things. And we've done that across funds. We've scaled back. We're not hiring part-time workers in public works, which is out of the general fund. What we're talking about, we've scaled back. We're not hiring part-time workers and a full-time worker in Park and Rec, which is that fund. So I'd like to also point out that because all of our funds are driven by a millage, that's Park and Rec, the fire hydrant fund, the general fund, the money we give to the ambulance company, that level of stable collection goes across all of those funds. So just by that applicability, we're seeing all of our funds being stable then, which is very, very good news. Other than that, we'll continue to watch. We're continuing to scale expenses back, even as we speak, just in an overabundance of caution. I'll make sure that I report to you every month by month on these specific important revenue line items in the budget, how that's trending, and a month-to-month report on expenditures as well, that you can see where we are. And I'll remind you as well, we'll put out the monthly treasurer's report as we go. I didn't say this in my report, but I will outline it now. I did have a conference call, a lengthy conference call with the auditors yesterday. Our audit for 2019 is well underway. I will have a specific time frame for you outlining the timing to wrap that report up, to have drafts out, to have the auditors scheduled at some time here shortly to come in and to have all of that completed. Part of sometimes the delay with these reports is under these new reporting requirements, you're required to list on your balance sheet your pension obligations and things that we're reliant on the actuary to get us. People are working remotely. We got those things underway with the actuary before all of the shutdown started. So we're actually ahead of where a lot of other towns are. The auditors have all that information now, and it's just assembling it into this report. So hopefully that audit presentation will be soon. So that's all I have. I don't know if you have any questions about any of those things.
John, go ahead.
Yeah, I know last year we discussed and reviewed stopping the use of actively managed stock mutual funds in our pension funds to free up cash that will be used to fund the pension funds. Has that been completed?
Yes.
Excellent.
It outlined after that meeting. They came back. If you'll recall, John, I'm not going to put you on the spot, but back. I know, because there's a lot. So if you'll recall, they came back with several options of like all index funds, a blend of index funds. I think the board essentially picked a blend that had something like an $80,000 to $100,000 savings from fees. That took place back then. Now, I will be getting to all of you soon an update on where we are with the pension fund. As you can imagine, there's a big difference where our pension fund sat March 31st and where it sits now. We've recouped lots of those expenses. And just as a reminder to the board, we're like 60-40 invested, with 60% or so, even albeit more in index funds, in equities, and 40% in bonds and cash and what have you. But we've recouped a lot of that. I have asked that firm for insights like, should we be doing anything? We've made up so much money in a short period of time. Should we try to do something? Should we tighten that up? Should we lock that in? They have an initial report they had given me on some suggestions that I'll make sure that I provide to the board in very short order.
So the good news is we're only doing active management on bond funds then, right? So cash and stocks all index.
I don't, John, I'll have to re-examine that. Remember, it was 100%, but it was a sizable portion.
Yeah, no, that's good. It's helpful.
Any other comments?
Kurt, just one quick question. Most of the discussion was basically year to date or through the end of April, I guess. Anecdotally, or if you have true numbers, how do you feel about the numbers, let's say pre-March? I'm somewhat arbitrarily picking a date, but pre-March 1st versus March through the end of April. Did you see are our numbers this year buffered by a really good first 2-3 months of the year, and then we had a really down, let's say April-ish, or did they look good throughout and we're not falling off a whole heck of a lot? I'm curious as to what you're seeing for trends.
No, I think your first example is right. I'll point to building permits. We were so far ahead on building permits. Things were really booming. I mean, and not just big building permits like brand new construction, but people doing lots of work that all of a sudden, when all that stopped, the building permit number, as an example, we collected something like $9,000 in April for building permits, and we've been averaging something like $60,000 to $70,000 a month before that. So we're already back to that 60 or 70,000. It's sort of the same thing at the same point, Dan, I made with the golf course. What gave us that buffer was the fact that it was warm and we had some revenue coming in golf. So that did give us a buffer. Real estate transfer taxes are a bit different. 50% of that comes from people having their taxes escrowed throughout the year. So regardless of the impact, most of that would have already been collected with an April due date for discount period. So in the end, I think you're right. Most of the things that we can see where economic activity is impacted, we were doing very well before. And so now it's just going to be a question of, can we at least get back to a mid-level? And it seems like now we are. And again, I'm not seeing numbers. The tell is going to be where the May transfer tax number is. That's going to be the big number. I mean, that has tended to be a big number in the past, or a bigger number in the past. So as an example, the May transfer tax number last year was $136,000, right? June was $290,000. That represented something like 20% of our collection was just in June last year. So we'll see where May is, and hopefully that starts to trend back up. These sales now can be expanded beyond, or soon just virtual sales, with real estate agents hopefully actively being able to sell these properties. And we'll see that number. But we have seen, the one measure we have now we've never had before is these lateral inspections. So a lot of times when these lateral inspections come in, we know someone's got their house on the market. We've started to see those start to dip. All the way through March, there were lots of them sitting there. So we'll have a good measure, I think, to see that. But I have a feeling May is going to be a significant dip, and then we'll have to go from there.
And then I guess the second question is, if we're going to follow the trend with basically the virus, really, then what what phase we're in generally. So if we have, hypothetically, we have a second peak later in the year, as some are predicting, we might see reasonably soon, we might see an uptick in various revenues. But if we do have a second peak in the number, in the virus, then we may see a secondary dip that we should plan for. Is that fair?
That is fair. I mean, it would be what would the effect of a second dip be? What would it be? Would it be there's going to be things that are going to be scaled back and closed back down? Does that look different? Is the reaction going to be different as far as nationally and in the state? And but to me, I mean, we're going to have to, on a month-by-month basis. I've had people ask me, it's hard to give guidance on this. And in fact, as managers, we've been talking. You have publicly traded companies that have now said they're not going to give guidance for the rest of the year. For us, it's relatively simple. I mean, and it's easier here because we have a predictable tax base. We don't have an earned income tax and these things that can change so swiftly and with a volatile nature. But it's going to be important that we follow things month by month here so we can react if we have to sit and scale things back. And then, we have. I mean, I think even we've been cautious with purchases. We purchased the one piece of equipment this year instead of the three. We've done a lot of things, to make sure we're buffering ourselves even as things are getting better.
Thank you, Kurt.
Thank you, Kurt. No further questions, comments?
No public comment.
Sorry, say Monica.
No public comment.
Where is the public comment?
No.
Okay, let's go to item 12, zoning hearing board. Mr. Trulove.
Yes, briefly, before I mention about the zoning hearing board, there was an executive session tonight, commenced at about 7 p.m. All the board members, along with Mr. Ferguson and myself, participated in the executive session at which litigation items were discussed. And that executive session ended about the time this meeting started. There are two matters for zoning hearing board consideration tonight, or zoning hearing board appeal consideration tonight. First, James E. Millward is requesting a variance for property located at 341 Sherwood Drive in order to allow greater than permitted impervious surface and construction of a shed within setback. I believe he also borders a detention basin. And for the information I have, he does not. The house is not located in a flood zone. Therefore, we recommend deferral to the zoning hearing board unless the board members have a different sentiment.
I entertain a motion to defer.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Mr. Lewis, seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it.
Thank you. The next, Craig Robert Sanford is requesting a variance for property located at 102 Effingham Road in order to permit chickens on a property having less than the required 5 acres. The property here is approximately 3 acres. It has a downhill slope in the Westover section. This is one of the situations where, again, the zoning hearing board, and Mr. McCarty would certainly know that from his experience, has a great deal of experience with these situations. Unless there's a contrary sentiment, again, we recommend deferring to the zoning hearing board.
I'll entertain a motion for deferral.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Lewis, second. All those in any discussion? Well, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all I have. I'm not sure if Mr. Ferguson or Mr. Majewski are taking the next item. I'll certainly be glad to participate, but I'm not the.
Okay, with that, we'll go to item 13, zoning hearing inspections and planning. Mr. Ferguson?
Sure, and I think Mr. Majewski is on here somewhere if we need to refer to him. So I did put in your packets all the information we have regarding, it's been a while, Planning Commission recommendation of the proposed overlay ordinance that they had approved. the discussion that has taken place before, and when Mr. Grenier was chair, regarding, and I do want to say this for the public, because I've had people call concerned about, I know that there are people that like this idea, that there's others that don't, that for the public to understand, in the end, someone has the right to come in and make a request for their property. When someone comes in and makes a request for their property, the board is obligated to see that through one way or another, whether it's something that is inevitably approved or not. They still have the board has a legal obligation to run that process. So what was discussed and outlined to all of you and is sitting here is a date that was put on the agenda for May 27th. And I want to make sure that there's no confusion about what that represents. That May 27th date would be a special meeting to discuss the ordinance as it was reviewed and sent forward by the Planning Commission with all the materials that we have, as well as any updates or things that have gone on since that had taken place regarding whether the developer had made changes, agreed to make changes that the Planning Commission said any concerns that the board would have. But it would be to vet all of those things, to go through all of those things, with the idea in the end then that you would actually set a public hearing, presumably, about 45 days in the future, which would be, I don't have a calendar in front of me, but my guess is somewhere early to mid-July. When you came out of that process, though, the motion would be either to make a motion to advertise the ordinance or not. And if you made a motion to advertise the ordinance, there's a process that I had outlined in my report as far as what that entails. That would then go, if there was changes to the ordinance, that would go back to the Planning Commission, that goes back to the Bucks County Planning Commission. But this meeting itself isn't to approve the overlay district. You can have a discussion about how it stands. It would certainly be a public meeting. I would anticipate you'd obviously have the developer and his professionals there to answer questions. If the board wanted to see updates with that or changes to that, this would be a time that you could discuss that prior to advertising. And then you would set the actual official public hearing date for July, where essentially you'd be getting deeper into the detail of the plan, what have you at that point. So I don't know what you want to discuss with that. The meeting on the consideration here would be to just set that first meeting with the intended goal in the end to actually set the public hearing.
So with that, I would entertain a motion to for approval of scheduling a special meeting on May 27th for a public meeting to consider advertising the overlay ordinance.
So moved.
Do I hear a second? I'll need a second.
I'll second.
Recording second. Okay. Any discussion?
Yeah, sure. And I'm not opposed to schedule. The reason I didn't second that motion is just because we have a lot of information. I'm fully in favor of the process we're following, as I think Mr. Ferguson may have even been alluded to when you mentioned my name as chair last year. My only concern with the specific date, is that we just recently received a lot of information to go through. I think we all have a lot of good ideas that we want to put forth and compare to the information that's out there. And I think we need a little time to do that. On top of that, May 27th is also, it's a holiday week, Memorial Day is just a few days before. And so my only thought right now is that, and I know our correct me if I'm wrong, I'm looking at my calendar here, our next regular supervisor meeting after that would be June 3rd, which is the following Wednesday, right? So that would not be a good date. So I would, I would like to propose an alternative date if folks are interested, to give us some time, and that would just be June 10th. I think that would give us enough time to go through all of the information that I know we've all looked at it, back in the October-ish timeframe when it was going through the Planning Commission, but I think a lot has gone on. That was a long time ago, and at the same time, some new stuff has gone on. I just personally would like a little extra time to go through it, so that when we do have this special meeting, we can really go through the process in great detail and come up with the best ordinance possible, if that's indeed the way we're going to go, so that we're not, if we're going through this process, going through it, and then maybe not having enough time coming up with ideas during the public hearing, might require a second public hearing, and that would just extend it another 45 days. If I Mr. Chulov, if I'm incorrect on that, please correct me. So I just have some concern about having about a week till the special meeting to prepare for it. That's it.
And I would concur on that. In fact, the one thing that was kind of unfortunate is that there was a large submission that's from October 16th that we didn't get until Friday. So in general, I'd like to get that stuff as soon as the township gets it or it's addressed to us. So there's a lot of reading that. And the developer actually has not provided a revised draft of the multi-use overlay. So they technically haven't responded to what the Bucks County Planning Commission and the Lower Makefield Planning Commission actually provided for and requested in their review of the land use decision. So I think June 10th would work. I also think in advance of that, we should ask our solicitor to draft a legal review considering our options in reviewing the proposed land use, because we do have a number of different options of how to review this in a responsible way. Because we have the option of revising the OR zoning for a special exception for this, or the overlay approach, or there's other approaches to conditional use kinds of things that could be considered. And I think it'd be helpful for board members when they view trade-offs and approaches to reviewing this particular land use, that they have a good sense of what the risks are in reviewing it under different circumstances and which the best option for the township is. So I think, my general sense is, June 10th would be fine. I do have a disability advisory board committee meeting, but move that before or after, that's fine. But I would be inclined for June 10th.
Any other comments? The only thing I would say, I'm not disagreeing. However, I think this is a big issue that warrants our due deliberation. If we start on the 27th, there's no reason for us to make a decision on the 27th. We can continue. If it goes into the 3rd or even the 10th, I think this is something that is an obligation for this board to, this is my opinion. We have an obligation to vet this thoroughly. And I think the information we got on Friday, we have at least a week to review it. And if necessary, if issues come up on the 27th, we just continue it and we continue the discussion until we make a decision. And I would rather do it in the public view than outside of the public view. So we can consider this the first of maybe one or more workshops where we come to a decision on this overlay district ordinance. That's my consideration. So,
but Fred, with that point, then I think what you could do is if that was the will of the board, if you had the meeting on the 27th, you would then just announce if it was another day, like Dan's Day of the 10th, we just run another advertisement. And Dave, is there an issue? I don't think that there's any. I know we're always on the clock with these things, but I think as long as we're moving forward in good faith and it was continued to the 10th, because there's going to be a lot to cover regardless of you do it on the 27th, and that may warrant multiple meetings anyways.
Yeah, I don't think that would be an issue. I really don't. I think given the complexity and the interest in it, I think it would not become a problem at that point. If we have to worry about the clock, we can always talk to the developer about that as well. But I can't imagine under the circumstances as we'd be moving forward, there would be a problem with that.
But I don't think we've ever slowed down the developer in this case at all.
No, and I agree with you.
Acceded to every request. The developer is the one who went quiet on us for 5 months. So my concern is, do you think you could have a detailed memo for us in advance of next week's meeting, reviewing those options for us?
Well, I'm not sure what we're talking about anymore, but was the most recent suggestion that we have a meeting next week and 2 weeks so that we bifurcate the meeting, so we get it started, but don't end it? And then John, I'm not sure what you're trying to direct Dave to do.
Yeah,
So
I'm
I
not
had
sure. I mean, and to answer the first part of it, we could always recess the meeting next week as opposed to adjourning it that way. You don't have to advertise. You say we're going to recess it to a date certain, reconvene at that point. And then, yeah, I'm not sure exactly what the direction is that you want me to. I mean, in terms of what you're discussing with respect to the project, is it which type of reviews are available to determine the use of the property? Is that what you're asking me for?
Yeah, I mean, so there's a lot of different approaches we could take. One of them is to revise the OR zoning to allow for special exceptions that would allow a multi-use usage within the OR district, or even a portion of the district.
So in lieu of an overlay district, you say amend the OR ordinance itself, number one.
Yeah, yeah, and there's value.
You also mentioned conditional use. Those obviously that's the same standard, but one is heard by the
Hearing board.
supervisors, the other one's heard by the zoning hearing board.
Yep, yeah. And the reason I mention that is there's a couple trade-offs. One is a concern, and I know all the supervisors are particularly sensitive to this, that any decision will lead to litigation in this particular case. So we need to know what the risks are of certain approaches with respect to litigation. Additionally, we need to also kind of consider what provides the board with the maximum amount of flexibility to ensure that any final proposed land use delivers the exact amount of benefits we think it should for the community if it were to be approved. So that's where looking at those options gives us some choices around that. And we haven't received any legal review of that, and that's why I was asking for that.
Well, obviously, we've done obviously some work on the edges with what we have now, but we've not been directed. We were certainly not going to undertake something without specific direction from the board. To answer your other question, can we do it by next Wednesday? We can certainly endeavor to do that. I don't want to represent sitting here today that could be done given the holiday weekend and some other things that are approaching. I know that my partner, Ms. Kirk, who probably will have a lot of work on this, is taking some well-deserved time off away from the area for a little bit. So
I only want to point out for the board as well that whenever you do have a meeting, that it does need to be advertised in advance. So if the board was going to have a meeting next Wednesday, we'd have to have the ad in the paper sent to the courier tomorrow for it to be published in time. So regardless, we have to time that stuff regardless. But on a meeting on the 27th, that's how that would work.
And that's why it makes a case for the June 10th meeting date, or even using the June 3rd scheduled meeting for this function.
The motion is still for May 27th.
procedurally, you could either, as the motion stands, and now it's for the 27th, you can vote on that. And if it passes, obviously, we have to then go with what Mr. Ferguson mentioned in terms of making sure we get the notice out. If it doesn't pass, and there's another motion for June 10th, that provides us a little more time to get the ad together. So whatever.
Would the maker of the motion accept a friendly amendment to move it to June 10th?
I'm willing to continue the discussion because I'm lost, right? Because I think one thing we're talking about is starting it because we all know, I hope we all know that this is not going to be like a 30-minute meeting. And so I like the idea of it being planned so that it's bifurcated. So to Dan's point, right, I'm imagining that when we start the discussion, it might inform certain decisions and maybe even trigger additional questions that we want to ask. So if we start it next week with the concept that it would go over to the 10th, I think we might end up getting the best result.
So I take it it's a no on that.
Well, it's not a no yet. It might be a no, but I really want to hear from all the board members, right? Because this is the way that we have to do things. And it's kind of, to my mind, it's kind of weird, right? We knew on the agenda that this was going to be something under consideration. Now I'm hearing there are concerns about that date versus another date. I want to be open to people's concerns, but I also don't want to, just make decisions that don't really seem to be thoughtful for where we're trying to get to. So that's why I'm trying to either get more feedback from people or no.
Carney, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I was just going to ask Dave, Mr. Truelove, do you have, is there an advantage to starting this process sooner than later?
Is there an advantage? I mean, it just gets us the information out in the public, but whether or not, 2 weeks to me, given the age of the project and the process so far, is not going to be a fatal part of it. To Ms. Blundy's point, though, if you want to start, and it is going to take more than one hearing clearly to do this. So, there's no hard and fast answer on that, to be honest with you. It's really the comfort level of the board and how much you want to achieve and what information you want to have when you start this out or when you move on from there. So,
in my opinion, that this process started almost a year ago with the Planning Commission. We're all well aware of it. The public is concerned one way or another on progress and resolution. I think it's time, for my own opinion, I think it's time for the board to start the discussion sooner and take as much time as we need to come to a decision. So my firm belief would be to start next week, and however long it takes for us to make a decision, that's how long it'll take.
And just so, from my understanding, John and Dan, the additional time would be utilized for what?
So obviously it would give the solicitor time to draft a memo reviewing our options in terms of the project. And second, we have not received
that memo yet.
Pardon me?
You keep
I had
talking
the
about
point of order, guys.
process in place for a long time, and I'm not sure anyone's decided on that memo other than yourself. So,
excuse me. Yeah. So there's that, and that second, we have not received revised language from the developer at all. It's been 5 months, so I've not received revised overlay language. So I'm not sure what I would be reviewing.
I don't know that the developer would be expected to give revised language.
They did before through the Planning Commission process.
The Planning Commission made a recommendation for approval with comments to the board of their concerns about traffic. So the developer was not instructed to revise their ordinance based upon the Planning Commission recommendation.
So what would we be reviewing then? The ordinance that was drafted by the developer before the Planning Commission gave its request that they include the Bucks County Planning Commission's recommendations.
So in the end, we have the packets that includes the recommendation. We have the Planning Commission's comments that they have that we then put in the packet as far as how the developer has addressed that. And when they come before you, they're going to sit and go over the ordinance as it was outlined. You all will point out any concerns you may have with anything in there, whether it's impervious surface, any credits, anything at all that you may want to have a discussion with to change, tweak, what have you.
But some of those are specific to the saldo process. I'm talking about the overlay part. I don't want to, I see Jim maybe can help us here, who's on mute.
When the Planning Commission had reviewed the ordinance and made a recommendation, they recommended that the Board of Supervisors move forward with enacting a mixed-use overlay ordinance. Their one concern was that some of the credits that they were proposing within the ordinance be reviewed by the Board of Supervisors. So basically, they sort of said, we're pretty comfortable, but we'd like the board to actually weigh in on some of those bonuses and credits and look at those more closely based on the review, the informal review from the Bucks County Planning Commission.
But the Bucks County Planning Commission had other items as well, not just the credits. The Planning Commission did make mention of the credits and did ask for that, but they also had a series of other requests as well.
Right, and now this gives us the opportunity, right? We've had that. We've seen what the developers requested, right? That was their ask. We've had that for, depending on which document you want to look at, for some time. And now we need to start the process of saying yay, nay to that. And by that, I don't mean one and done, to the elements of the overlay that we may accept or may want to amend. And I think that's how the process was designed when we started it last year. And Dan, if you could correct me, I'd appreciate it. But I think we're exactly where we were meant to be at this moment in time.
You know, if I could also point out to the board, I've done these on a couple of occasions on some different types of development projects. These overlay districts do give the most control to the board to control that process, as far as you can reject everything that the Planning Commission said and insist that the developer on any number of things that are stricter or don't give credits, that, you know, the developer then may sit and say they're okay with or they're not. So that is a lot of control that the board has, and there would not be the obligation, as we've said, that this is sort of one meeting where this is rushed to advertise an ordinance. There's multiple ways to do this, and we talked about this last year. There are towns that would take the Planning Commission recommendation and just run the advertisement on that ordinance, do the whole 45 days, then have the meeting, then if there's any changes, have to re-advertise it and do this again. We still may have to do this, but this is still, you know, we're essentially having a preemptive public hearing. We're actually having dueling public hearings, because regardless if you guys decide to vote to advertise something on whether it's May 27th or June 10th, there's going to be then the official public hearing sometime in July or late July, where then you're truly having what we think of as a public hearing to you know, give everybody a crack at discussions with that as well. Most towns don't do that. It's the one public hearing or multiple public hearings on that ordinance. So you've set up a process that's extremely transparent, that gives you all the chance to weigh in before it's advertised, to sit with the developer before to really pick apart what they want to do, and then to do it again with the public hearing process.
So Kurt, what you're saying is whether we do it next week, I'm sorry, Dan, whether we do it.
I was just going to respond to your question, so go ahead.
Whether we do it next week or whether we do it June 10th, essentially it's that same preemptive public hearing process either way.
So James, you're right. This really isn't the public hearing. This is you all setting the public hearing date. But because we've set this process up, and I'll give Dan credit, I'm not trying to, you know, when he and I first started talking about this, I said, I've never seen it done this way, because I hadn't. But it really is a more transparent process, because you're going to let the public see you all weigh in on what you think of that Planning Commission ordinance, to sit and go over with the developer, and then you're going to do it again. So the public's going to have essentially probably 4 public hearings that they're going to have as part of this, technically, at least probably the 1 or 2 now to advertise, and then the 1 or 2 that we'll have, you know, in July, or, you know, if it gets extended. So I think I have to commend Dan. I'm not continuing to do this. I remember Dan telling this when I first said this. I was like, Dan, this doesn't make sense. The more I thought about it, though, and the more I talked to Jim, it did make sense, because there will be more meetings and more opportunity to pick this stuff apart doing it this way.
So
I'm a broken clock here. I get it right twice. Sorry, James, did you want to finish?
no, go ahead, please.
All right. So since you and I think Supervisor Blundy both were asking questions with respect to the date and where we are in the process, I agree with Supervisor Blundy. I think this is where we are supposed to be in the process, and we're going through the process, etc. My main concerns are really just the date, and the two main concerns with the date of May 27th are, one, it's a national holiday week. Granted, we are in a generally a shutdown period, so we're not all traveling as much as maybe we would have in other years or historically. But again, this is a public meeting. It's a special public meeting, so we want to
That people can attend virtually.
right, but we want to people will still be doing stuff with their families. They may not want holiday weeks are tough, is what I'm getting at. So we want to maximize the opportunity for our citizens to participate in that meeting. So that's part one. And I trust, if I have to cram for a meeting, I'll cram for a meeting. That's fine. But I'm just concerned about that. And maybe it's a little bit optics too, to make sure that we are transparent and it comes across as being transparent, you know? And then part two is really, there's a lot of information there. I know we all want to go through it in detail. I have some initial idea, for what Mr. Majewski was saying about what the our planning commission recommended versus what Bucks County Planning Commission gave for ideas. I think it allows us, I'm just saying, an extra week or two. Maybe we start this on June 3rd, depending on what the agenda for June 3rd looks like. I don't know what we have to deal with. But just a little extra time after a holiday week to go through it in detail, so that we when we start the process, we hit the ground running, versus start and stop. And I do understand Supervisor Lewis's request for this memo, and how I look at a memo like this, and maybe this is an executive session item that we discuss, depending on as it may pertain to potential litigation. I'll defer obviously to the solicitor on his guidance on that, but just to understand not only what our options are. I'm not sure I look at this quite the same way in terms of options of special exception versus conditional use versus overlay, but really what you're the attorney, Supervisor Blundy, the legal implications per se, or what we have to be aware of with each of these, with the process going into it, so that we're well aware of the township's rights and responsibilities with going through this process as we enter into something that's this big. So personally, I would prefer, I'll use that word, I would prefer starting on June 3rd or June 10th, just to allow us a little extra time and to not conflict with a holiday week. That's my main point there.
So I'm going to start calling it a precursor instead of preemptive, because preemptive makes it sound like we're trying to, dodge something. And I think we're trying to do the opposite here.
Right.
But Dan, are you wedded to Wednesdays? Like, would June 4th work for you?
Oh, no, good. Yeah, I'm just in the, we all have Wednesday on the mind with our meetings. Yeah, no, it's honestly any time that week and within that 2-week period after next week would be fine with me, as long as everyone's available and we can, advertise and do all that.
So I certainly would not want any resident to think we were trying to do something the week of Memorial Day as a way to dodge or hide or whatever. Honestly, I've been in this basement for so long, I kind of forget that there are holidays coming, and I didn't really think anyone would be traveling. And if they are traveling, I figured they could just join us virtually. But if if the only resistance is the optics of it, Dan, I acknowledge that, and I would amend my motion so that instead of the 27th, it'd be June 4th.
And can I just chime in with the June 4th date, that there may be some state, I guess, announcement that may be coming out that day that may chase people to not even be near their computers or want to sit at home after that. And I mean, I'm just guessing if we change over to a code yellow, I don't think that people are gonna want to sign on and listen to a BOS special meeting it's a Friday, correct?
No, that would be
It'll be
Thursday.
a Thursday.
Thursday.
Thursday, yeah.
It's like, what's happening?
I think if we did it on the 4th, I think people would listen. And it isn't a holiday. So if there is an amendment to have the meeting for advertisement, consider advertising to from May 27th to June the 4th. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
I forget who seconded the motion.
Mr. Harvey?
Yeah, I'll second it again.
Okay. Thank
So
you.
we have a change of date from May the 27th to June the 4th. Okay. So any discussion on the new date?
I'll just say thank you for the consideration. I think it's a nice compromise. So thank you.
Okay. Hearing no further comment from the board, we'll open
I
up.
concur as well.
From Mr. Lewis?
Yeah, I concur. That's a reasonable compromise. It gives people some choice, and it gives us some flexibility. So I'd be okay with that. And then asking for a memo to review the different choices in terms of how to review this. We can certainly make that a secondary motion, or if you're okay with it on the primary, that's fine too.
I think the point of the executive session, Dave, is that why you're raising your hand? Is
No, I would just say you can make that a secondary motion if you want.
Okay.
So I would take care of this motion first. Then if it passes, then you go to the next motion about whether you want to direct us to do anything.
I strongly urge that we discuss that in executive session.
Okay, so closing board comment, and we'll open it up to public comment at this point.
We do have a public comment. Lisa is coming in. Lisa is in.
Lisa, give your
Hello.
full name and the address, and then you go ahead and give your comment.
Lisa Tenney, 156 Pinnacle Circle, Yardley.
Go ahead, Lisa.
Hello? Okay,
ahead, we hear
thank
you.
you. Okay, yes. Yeah, so I am good for you postponing the date because this is a big project, and I think you need to get all on board on how you're thinking about this and all the future implications, economically, environmentally, and also on the taxes and the municipal services that we're already paying into that will need to go to this Prickett Preserve development. Now, I know I've sent you all the table of consideration. So on this, I would certainly like you to discuss amongst yourself and consider this is your future legacy as Board of Supervisors. Please don't smile. This is important. I also want to know, 45 days puts us into July, right? So we're in the middle of a pandemic. Most of us are worried about our jobs, our children, our loved ones, the education of our children, and you think it's a good idea to listen to a developer, come up with the plan. I'm not going to be ready in 45 days, and I'm offended that Wegmans sent me a card in the mail that asked me to change my vote, trying to influence my vote to vote for the passing of the liquor, allowing liquor to be sold in grocery stores. Their project hasn't even been approved. This shows me that this development doesn't have respect for you, Board of Supervisors, and it doesn't have respect for me, the citizen, LMT citizen, Pennsylvania citizen, and USA citizen. So, I might be consulting a constitutional attorney. It's my right to have my voice heard. And I've tried to have it heard. Thank you.
You're quite welcome. Thank you.
Fred, may I just weigh in for 1 second, just because I don't think it's been pointed out, just so everyone's aware. If and when the board makes a motion to advertise the ordinance, that 45-day period is not an arbitrary period. That period is defined for us by the municipality's planning code. But that is put in there. That is part of the legality that was put in there. So, for example, in years past, if you had a board make a motion to have a public hearing and they'd say, well, we'll set the public hearing 3 years out or we'll never have it, was essentially what changed to as an obligation on the townships to run the process through. Whether you all intend inevitably that this gets approved or not, that date and that time frame is dictated to you by state law.
Hello?
Yes, Lisa.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I understand this is a process and it's not your fault, okay? This is a process and that you're involved in. And so are the citizens and so is everybody else. But, you know, the developers, if the children in this township have to wait a summer to go swimming, then the developers can wait until the pandemic is over, right? I know 45 days. Yeah. This is a pandemic. So find out, I guess we need to find out what other communities are doing.
Fair enough. Thank you very much, Lisa.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Fred, the next caller is Brian. There are two Brians, so it's Brian number 1.
Am I Brian number 1?
You are.
Am I okay? Good. I have a few questions actually. The first one is
First, Brian, give your full name and address, and then you can go ahead and make your comment.
I'm sorry. It's Brian Jameson, 100 Polo Run Drive in Morrisville. My question: why does this is to pick a date to have a public hearing? Why does it require a special meeting? And why can't this be done in a regular meeting? And number 2, Supervisor Blundy said that that it has been 5 months and we should get started on this. It's been 5 months because the developer has held on to this for 5 months. Am I correct that they could have filed this in February? And is that true? I mean, they could have filed it at any time in the last 5 months. And I'm wondering, I'm suspicious of the time frame because they know the 45-day statute. So they know if this was scheduled and a date was set on May 27th, that it would be in the early to mid-July when people are theoretically on vacation and away and unlikely to tune in on a nice evening to watch this on a computer. And that wasn't an accident. They did that on purpose. Come on, let's be honest. And another thing, the woman that just spoke, Lisa, I mean, I think I was going to say this even before she mentioned it. This should be done. This should be held on to when the hearings in front of the planning board had 200-300 people in attendance. Correct? They were very well attended. So I think that this should be held until this can be done in an actual real life meeting. Because I wonder, and I would like someone at the township to answer this, does the township have the digital capacity to handle 100 people calling in with questions? How would that be done? Would people be put on hold, or would like 5 people be put on hold and everybody else get busy signals, which would make them probably give up after, about 15, 20 minutes? I mean, how would that be done, first of all? And second of all, why can't this wait until people can actually show up in an auditorium? Even if the largest auditorium we can find, and I should say, as a township, block off the seats that can't be sat in to make sure that everybody is socially distanced enough. And another question I have is, the last supervisors meeting, I was told that the traffic study couldn't be given out because it was a draft. But you all got, according to some people here, you all got yes, I was, Mr. Ferguson. If you're shaking your head, no. That's what, I'll go back and look at the video, but that's what I was told.
My head was down. I wasn't shaking my head.
I was going in this way. It was going in the sideways. I'm sorry. I assumed.
That's okay. My 3-year-old ran into the room, and I was trying to make sure she didn't get in the camera. I was not shaking my head at you.
Okay.
Ryan, thank you. I'm going to stop.
No. I have one more question.
Okay.
When can the public get our hands on the documents that you're discussing about the traffic study, about everything that's been submitted, about the packets that the supervisors got last Friday, any environmental studies, any conceptual drawings, any agreement that has been submitted to, any correspondence between the engineers? When can we see that? Yeah, I mean, you're talking about being a transparent process. When can this be that transparent?
I can answer that question. And again, Fred, I think I counted 14 questions in there that he asked. So I'll answer a couple of questions that I think are most relevant, Fred. Yes, we will get all of that information in terms of that packet, the reviews that were done by Bucks County Planning Commission, by our own traffic engineer, and their traffic study. I would imagine today's Wednesday, we could have it on there by tomorrow or Friday at the latest. Second, the system that we have can hold 250 callers. So we do have the capacity to queue up a lot of people. Whether or not people would wait any more than they would wait if they were 250 people in line, I can't really answer that. The question that you first asked, why are we going through this process? I think I explained during the manager's report, was that this was sort of going as far as the township could go to have a transparent process, have essentially a process before we advertise that amounts to its own public hearing, and then subsequently the public hearing as required by the MPC. So that was the reason for all of that.
But I would argue with you, the special meeting is less of a transparent process than having it at a regular meeting, well advertised.
It'll be well advertised, and it'll be the same way. I mean, our regular meetings like are going to go.
If I could answer that, Mr. Jameson, we've had this issue several times, and the boards in the past have been criticized for not having dedicated meetings for issues like this. This board has taken it upon itself to listen to what other residents have said in the past, to say a dedicated meeting about one issue, and this is the one issue.
That's a dedicated meeting to set a date? Come on.
Well,
I'm not sure. That's it.
You're complaining about not being transparent and being too transparent. I'm not sure what your argument is, other than you just.
I think I think less people tune in to a special meeting. It's like a special election where the turnout is much less than a regular election. It's the same thing. A special meeting will be less turnout than a regular meeting.
Well, the special meeting is to start the process, but it's to schedule the hearings themselves.
Right, but why can't that be just a regular meeting?
Excuse me, sir, I'm talking. After that meeting, then other meetings can announce the schedule going forward. So we have 2, 3, 4 opportunities to tell people the hearings are going to start this time. We can say it on May 27th, or excuse me, June 4th. You can say it on June 17th. You can even say it 2 weeks hence after that in July. You've got at least 3 opportunities right there where people tune in. If they don't look at the website, if they don't look at anything else online or anything else, they're going to have those opportunities by watching these meetings to get that information.
Right.
But what I'm telling you is You're complaining about something, and this board is going way overboard, thanks to Mr. Grenier and Mr. Ferguson talking about this last year to try to set this process going forward. And frankly, I'm frustrated hearing you say this because as a lawyer, I could tell them you don't have to do it this way, but they are. And they're doing it because people like you and others have concerns about whether or not there's enough information out there. Now you're criticizing it for it. Frankly, I don't know what this board is supposed to do. I wouldn't know how to advise them after hearing what you say. I really have no idea.
Well, then you should, but you should know how to advise them, sir, because by
I just did, and I think I contrary to what you said because we get no direction from what you're saying.
Sir, I was speaking, okay, and you.
Thank you very much.
It's not. I'm not over it.
But I just want to ask you a question.
Time out.
Brian, please.
No. I get to add.
Brian, I'm the chair. I conduct this meeting. Thank you very much. I just want to redirect everybody. I have no problem with discussions, asking questions, but there comes a point where your point is made. So Brian's point was he doesn't want to have this meeting as a special meeting. He wants to have a regular meeting. I think we got that. Is there any other public comment, Monica?
Yes, Robert is next.
Hello.
Hello, Robert.
Can everybody hear?
Address and make your comment.
Yeah, Robert Abrams, 652 Teach Drive. I am a little bit at issue here with May 27th meeting, obviously because of the short notice, and it's to set up a hearing date and public meeting. Well, a public meeting to me is we all get together in some place, whether it's the township building or with all the rules and regulations, I guess we better check into the Lincoln Financial Field or something so we can have social distancing. But this project here is a project that's going to change the venue of the township potentially forever. And to sit here and virtually have a meeting, now you've said you have room for 250 people. I think I was, what am I, calling number 4 or 5 here? Hang on a half a second. I am on the phone 43 minutes and 47 seconds. Now, now go multiply that by about 9, and you're going to have people on the phone for 8 hours waiting to make a public comment virtually? I don't see that at all. This is one of the most important things that ever is. I mean, to me, it's an eyesore that doesn't belong there. All right, and I have my own personal.
You rather have a real meeting than a virtual meeting.
Right. I would like a real meeting, just as we did at Penwood School, where everyone had their opportunity to speak. And I can't see setting up a meeting, and I couldn't get from you guys there whether it was the Bucks County Planning Commission or the Township Planning Commission that had the traffic issues, or maybe both did, and that the developer doesn't respond to the traffic issues. Why are you having a meeting to approve or set up a meeting to approve or not approve when you don't even know what this guy's going to do about the traffic problems? Because he's going to come back after the fact, or after you approve or after you disapprove? No, he's got to tell you what he's doing. He has to create a safe environment for everyone in this township and everyone that uses the township.
Mr. Abrams, the meeting for June 4th is not to approve or disapprove of anything. It's to start the discussion.
It's to start the discussion. That's correct. But how can you start a discussion when you don't know what the developer is going to do about the traffic issues that one or both of the planning commissions have? And if he refuses to answer that, then there's no reason to set up any type of meeting, to set up another public meeting, or even to start a discussion, because you don't know what you're discussing.
Fred, can I weigh in on a comment?
Yeah, my feeling right now is that we need to wait for this epidemic to go to pass, and to have a public meeting no different than we had the 2 meetings at Penwood. And no one's going to dispute that there was a lot of public interest at both of them. And that'll be it for me, I guess.
Okay, thanks, Ms. Evans. But go ahead, Kurt. You can.
No, I do want to weigh in on one thing, because I just don't want to lose track of where we are. Is, as you'll recall at the last meeting, that was part of my manager's presentation did deal with traffic. Again, regardless of what anyone thinks about the project, I still want the board and the public to know what we have out there, and what is going to be put out that the first caller asked about does include the traffic study. That traffic study, as it's currently put together, is about 500 pages long. And as I had presented at that last meeting, does contemplate off-site improvements and the complications the township had legally to require a developer to do off-site improvements. And the developer who had presented that his client had indicated they wanted those themselves to take measures to make those off-site improvements. So whenever we have a meeting, that will be one of the topics that is discussed, is the traffic study that was conducted, as well as our own traffic engineers' insights, comments, reviews of how they believe that will translate to traffic on the site. So that will be part of it, regardless of when you have the meeting.
Fred, may I say one quick thing?
Sure.
And as part of this process, one of the things, and I think, Fred, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is one of your main stopping points for not having a meeting until, what are we now, going into June now, versus when they were originally talking about potentially November, even December of last year, was making sure that traffic was addressed before we have any type of meeting to move forward. And I know Supervisor Blundy was very concerned, in addition to traffic, was also concerned about pedestrian access, and those were things that needed to be addressed prior to having any public hearing discussion about the ordinance moving forward, because those were showstoppers. And I know last year when I was considering myself when to schedule things, those were items I listened to. And I think that's what not to put words in your mouth, but I think that's what you've been doing this year, and why you've held up for the last 5-6 months since becoming chair, was to wait for something like that to occur, for those studies to happen, for those improvements to be proposed, any other way you want to call it out. And they've, based on what Kurt's telling us and what we're hearing now, that's taken place. So we're at a point where we can digest it and then move forward and have a very open discussion about what's been proposed on any number of items also included in that proposed ordinance and overlay. And if I misspoke, please correct me, but I think that's very important to why we are where we're at this point in the game, because we as a collectively, and some individuals personally, were very strong about certain aspects that I think are important to the community as a whole. I just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you, Dan. And it's exactly the reason why it's been taking so long to get to this point. One of my requirements before I considered going forward would be that the traffic would be improved, not merely stay the same with the development. The information that we have before us that we can now take until the 4th to digest, to even start the, scheduling a actual public hearing on the ordinance. I think, after digesting everything that we have with regard to this ordinance specifically, will give us what we need to accept or reject eventually. Any other public comment, Monica?
Yes, Brian is next.
Hello, Brian. Give your full name, address, and you can make your comment.
Yep, Brian McNamara, 1412 Heather Circle. I just want to kind of highlight what everybody else is saying, as far as you guys should be able to have to face the voters on this in person instead of doing it through Zoom and through phone. I think it's a much tougher vote to have to face the voters in person, even though it seems like most of you are in favor of this development in one form or another. One thing up there with the rezoning for Marazzo's, and you got the rezoning proposed for the public storage warehouse behind Kohl's. Maybe the public storage warehouse should be moved over to the site where the apartments is being proposed as part of this development. That would be something of a compromise, instead of taking, that land, rezoning that land over there. I think we should all have a chance to see the traffic studies beforehand, and knowing that eventually the Gray Nun track is going to be coming up for rezoning. There's a lot of rezoning going up in the north end of the township. And I think this is kind of the stuff that you guys should be able to have to face the public in person and not over the phone and not over Zoom and do it this way. It's the total wrong way to do it. And limiting public comment to 3 minutes also is another way to stamp down people's opinions on this, and also moving public comment to the back of the meeting. But I think you guys had to face the public in this.
If I
Oh,
could,
and also one other, I have one, I'm sorry, John, one quick question for Chairman Weiss. I know you're selling your house. Are you planning to move someplace else in the township? Just wondering, this huge decision coming down. I know you're the elected member, but just wondering if you're planning to move someplace within the township.
Yes, of course.
Okay. I just wondering, we added somebody on the school board once that moved to South Carolina and still try to make votes. Not saying you were doing that. I just saw that you were moving and you refrained yourself from the Marazzo rezoning votes. I just was wondering.
No, found the place already, and hopefully we'll be moving in a couple of weeks. Thanks.
Thank you. John, you were saying something?
yeah, I guess I want to make clear that I haven't taken a position on this particular land use proposal, any zoning change, and I haven't made a suggestion either way on it. I want people to think that I'm giving it a fair hearing, and so that the folks who've written me who said it's the greatest thing since sliced bread and they're dying for artisanal Tuscan kale, I've told those people, well, there are downsides to this proposed land use. And to the folks who are opposed to it, I've told those people there are upsides to this proposed land use. And I think part of it is, the difficult part is, you have to be willing to assess this fairly and be aggressive in responding to the township's interests. And I know other supervisors have also not said that they're in favor or opposed of this. Some have, and they can speak for themselves, but some have not. And I think it's don't prejudge the board on that. It's not fair.
Any other public comment?
Yes, Philip is next.
Hi, Philip. Give your full name, address, and make your comment.
Good evening, Philip Tolbert, 1496 Woodview Road. I echo some of the other public comments that I would prefer if this was completely public. I appreciate, the fact that the board is actually being more transparent by actually adding additional pre-meetings, I think, as the manager called them. So I appreciate that, but I would prefer if all of them were completely face-to-face public, not behind phone calls or video or Zoom or things like that. So I echo that as well. I'm the only concern I have is the time frame as well. So when does that 45-day clock start? Has it already started since we now have a public version of this, or does it start on at the date of the first meeting, or does it start whenever the board decides it starts?
Can I answer that?
Sure.
No, that has not started yet. It would start, so if the board makes the decision to advertise an ordinance, it would be from that night. So whether if the board made a decision to advertise it on June 4th, or they had subsequent meetings, the clock doesn't start until they advertise the ordinance. And that 45-day period basically says you have to give 45 days. And you have to understand, it's not just for the public. That any proposed ordinance would go to the school district. It would go to adjacent municipalities.
Sure. Okay.
And everything. Yeah.
Okay. So since it hasn't started, I would prefer, face to face. So I would think that, even June 10th would be at risk, right? I think, we would have to get to green, and, there's no county in the Commonwealth that's green, let alone Bucks. So I think, I would prefer much, to to continue to be as transparent or continue to, lean on the transparency by face-to-face meetings as much as possible through the process, which would even include the extra ones that you're doing, before the official public ones. So that ends my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. Appreciate it. Any other public comment?
Oh, just checking. That's it for public comment.
Okay. Hearing no other public comment. All those in favor of scheduling a pre-meeting, I guess, for the...
I'll call that a special meeting, Fred. Special meeting.
Scheduling a special meeting for the consideration of advertising of the zoning overlay ordinance for June the 4th, signified by, one bit of information before we call the vote. June 4th is a school board meeting. So do you have a problem keeping it on the 4th?
I can also tell you in the end, having texted back and forth with Jim, because he is more familiar with this meeting schedule than I am, June 2nd, which is a Tuesday, is available. That same June 4th is available. I don't know if, Dan, you were the one weighing in on this, that 2 days makes a difference there, but June 2nd would be available as well if the conflict on the 4th is problematic for the board.
June 2nd's election day, so I think that's...
I'm sorry, I forgot about that. You're right.
Yeah. And I'm certainly open to June 1st or June 8th are options.
Are we still of the mindset that June 4th is just the beginning? Because if June 4th is just the beginning, then I say we hold to June 4th and then we can have it recess and then have another date to continue the conversation.
Okay. So all those in favor of scheduling the special meeting for June 4th, signify by saying aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Have it. Meeting will be scheduled for June the 4th.
Fred, do we assume, I don't know if we have to say this at this point now, or are we assuming 7 or 7:30 or whatever time? Do we have to set that now? I should have said this before. I was just looking at my calendar.
That's a good question.
I think you have the opportunity, if you want to, for example, knowing it'll probably be a long meeting, if you wanted to start it at 7 versus 7:30, you could. Dave, if they wanted to make a change, I mean, to me, the presumption would be it would be at 7:30. That's when they always meet. Would that need to be a separate motion if they were going to start it a half an hour early, if that's something the board wanted to contemplate?
I think if you get a consensus from the board to direct you to have it at 7 o'clock, I think that's enough, unless they want to take a formal vote. But we know it's the 4th, and they can direct you that by consensus that 7 o'clock would be the time to commence.
I think 7 o'clock probably is a better time.
Does that work for everybody?
It is. Great. Thanks.
Okay.
All right. Next item is general public comment on agenda.
Chairman Weiss, just to complete our last discussion, do I need a motion to request the solicitor develop a memo reviewing our choices and how we approve or disapprove this particular land use?
So that's an issue that I asked we could talk about in executive session.
So can we ask the solicitor to do it and then talk about it in executive session?
I would say that's
So
problematic.
Huh?
I think we should talk about the memo in executive session.
Okay, but we can have it. I would agree we should talk about it in executive session because it discusses potential litigation, but we should definitely get that moving then.
I don't agree with even how you categorize it, because there is no, I mean, everything could be litigated. So I guess everything's potential litigation, but
Well, there are certainly choices.
we're going to expend money to change a process that's been in play, that is the standard. I'm happy to talk about it, but I'd like to talk about it in executive session.
May I, Dr. Weiss, may I say one thing?
I mean, there's a question on the table. Do you want to, John, do you want to make your motion? Just spell it out a little bit, or do you need a little help with your?
Yeah, what I was looking for was a motion to ask the solicitor to draft a legal review considering our options in reviewing this proposed land use in terms of whether it's a special exception in OR zoning, the overlay district approach, or conditional use review. And for us to understand what our trade-offs are with respect to those three choices. The reason I ask that is it will likely be something we have to consider in the process. And the township manager has suggested that perhaps the overlay provides the maximum flexibility and the most precise option about how to do that. That could be correct, but it also may engender litigation risk as well. All three options likely have that. We should have an understanding what the trade-offs are. That's all I'm asking for. And I think it's a reasonable request.
There's a motion on the table to direct the solicitor to look at options and evaluate options. Do I hear a second?
I'll second just because I want to discuss something related to it.
Okay, there's a second. Discussion.
Sure, if you don't mind. So I'm interested in our solicitor's guidance on this issue for a variety of reasons. I'm not sure it's for the exact reasons that Supervisor, or I'd frame it quite the same way as Supervisor Lewis, although I think I understand where he's going. And it's just because I work in planning and there's all these various very technical planning terms that I want to make sure I can wrap my head around from a legal perspective. So I'm wondering if it might make more sense, since this is something we do want to have in preparation, I think, for our June 4th meeting, if it might make sense for us to have a brief executive session tonight after we get through the public meeting to discuss exactly what we might want, and have our solicitor, if this is appropriate, provide some guidance as to what we might want.
It's talking about, and Ms. Blundy mentioned it, that there's potential litigation issues. There's other issues too that we'd have to, I think, consider as part of that discussion. I can't even anticipate all those issues sitting here right now. I mean, I know the broad brush things, but there may be other things we look at that haven't even anticipated yet. I think it would be best, yes, to do that in that format. And then, when the hearings start, they'll be better informed. We'll all be better informed to be able to evaluate this as we go forward.
So that would, I guess that's an alternative approach. Maybe have I know it's 10 o'clock now, but maybe have a brief executive session tonight just to kind of wrap our heads around things and then see what the preferred next step may be specific to that item. John, I don't know how you feel about that.
Me. Yeah. No, I'm definitely up for that. I just want to make sure that we're reviewing this in a way that is, in the best interest of the township. So yeah, no problem.
Okay. So if you withdraw your motion, and we will have an executive session after this meeting, and come up with or we can recess, have a discussion, and go into executive session, and then come back to public session and consider the motion.
I can withdraw my motion, and then assuming we're having an executive session thereafter, because I don't think there's much left. Yeah, that would be fine.
I don't think if we determine an executive session, our office is supposed to perform this work, that I don't think a formal motion is required at that point.
It wouldn't be, no.
Right.
So you're going to withdraw your motion. We'll have an executive session.
Yep.
Fine. Great. All right. There is no discussion items on the agenda unless somebody wants to bring something up.
Did we have regular public comment?
Oh, sorry, I have regular public comment, non-agenda. Thank you, Supervisor Grenier.
Mary Ann would be our first caller.
I'm sorry, say again?
Mary Ann is our first caller.
Hi, Mary Ann. Give your full name, address, and make your comment.
Hi, Mary Ann Carroll, 13 East School Lane, Lower Makefield. I have several questions and comments on the ongoing traffic problems on East School Lane and Makefield Road. When I moved into the township 7 years ago and discovered I moved into an area that had traffic problems. I had reached out to the supervisor then, who was liaison to the traffic commission. Since then, I can't even recall how many times I have presented before the board of supervisors, reached out to township officials, the police chief, about these matters. But in 2017, immediately following the tragic death of a high schooler on Makefield Road, that being the second youth death on Makefield Road, the first one was in 1980, I again spoke about our neighborhood concerns as well as many of our neighbors, and asked that the township finally take action on the traffic problems. One of the things we asked for, something extremely minor, was that the stanchions at the crosswalk remain all year long, not just during the school year. At that point in time, prior to the board meeting, I was told by the public works director at the time, the stanchions were taken down in the summertime simply because they got hit so often. But I was promised during an August 2017 meeting of the Board of Supervisors that the stanchions would remain up all year long, at least as a very minor traffic calming measure. So my first question is, can the stanchions be put back?
Anyone want to take that one? Chief?
Hello?
Chief still on?
Kirk, do you have any comment?
I mean, I'll be honest with you, I'm not prepped for this discussion at this point. I hear what she's saying. I'd need to have a discussion with the chief and the public works director on any implications here. Otherwise, I hear what she's saying. I'm not prepared to answer that question on the spot at the moment.
Kurt, I'm sorry, I couldn't get in before. Yeah, we probably should discuss this with Greg because of that same situation about they keep getting hit and we keep losing stanchions. But the crosswalks that they're posted at are for actually school crossings. So I want everybody to understand that even though we put the stanchions up, if something should occur, that they're unenforceable during off-school times. And we had these discussions before. I have no problem putting them up. It's easy to put them back up again, but I don't want to be put in a situation where our officers are now called to enforce something that we really can't enforce.
My understanding, the stanchions are just a visual traffic calming measure. I don't know what they have to do with enforcement matters. But the second question I do have is regarding enforcement. During this school year, our neighborhood saw a pretty substantial increase in traffic enforcement in front of the elementary school. But unfortunately, once school went remote, we have not seen the same kind of enforcement. And the problems of extreme traffic problems on East School Lane and Makefield Road persist. So my second question is that as the police department schedule allows, can we continue to have traffic enforcement all 12 months, not just during the school year?
Sure, that's no problem at all. We always try to rotate the officers to problem areas, but understand that there's other intersections and roadways that are high accident areas and priority locations that they have to focus on. And every time that we posted police officers at that location, we did get some violators during school times because the speed limits are 15 miles an hour. But when on non-school hours, we rarely get a speeding where it's to the point where, again, it's enforceable by officers because we use different, measuring devices, VASCAR, AccuTrack, and we even use radar guns, although we can't write a ticket based on a radar gun. We use them to calculate the speeds, and very rarely do we have someone traveling at that high rate of speed that it's dangerous. But you're always going to get the exception, and we can't be there 24/7. But we will definitely rotate back to Makefield Road, even off school hours, whenever possible.
Okay, that leads into my third question of the night, and my frustration with the township's response to addressing a cohesive traffic calming and permanent solution to the extreme problems on East School and Makefield Road. As I understand, you have to rotate enforcement throughout the township, of course. There are no other roadways that have had 2 youth pedestrian deaths. I was more than frustrated when I happened to look at the agenda for tonight's board meeting and discovered that the township's planning a beacon at the intersection of Roloffs and Oxford Valley Road. While I think it's wonderful, and I do understand that the funding's probably coming from a state grant tied to some trails that are being installed, I can also say that I think it's very important for the township to look at long-term measures on Makefield Road because of the unique circumstances that exist. As I've presented numerous times, the entrance to Makefield Elementary is parallel to the entrance to East School Lane. At that location, there are over 10 traffic patterns in a small area. It's extremely, extremely dangerous. And our neighborhood has specifically, and myself personally, have asked the township to consider beacons at that location. And we have been discouraged because the township has always brushed us off on that matter and has not really investigated any funding measures for that. So while I think it's wonderful that the softball fields are a priority for beacons, I think an entrance to a school that is very close to the roadway where there have been 2 deaths and 10 traffic patterns, that I hope the township would look more seriously at finding funding alternatives to install the same type of beacons at our location. 6 years ago, the township did commission a traffic study for East School Lane. And at that time, the traffic engineer strongly recommended the installation of speed humps near 3 inches of asphalt on 2 locations on East School Lane. And the traffic engineer at the time that worked for Lower Makefield had indicated that it was the perfect location and condition for traffic calming. And at that time, the township dismissed the recommendations and took no action. And then a couple of years later, we had the death on Makefield Road. So if it's good enough for Oxford Valley Road, I think beacons at Makefield and East School Lane are something that have to be seriously looked at and really examined. So, and that's all I have for tonight.
Thank you very much, Mary Ann. I appreciate it. Any other public comment, Monica?
Yes, the next person is Sue.
Nice, Sue. Give your full name, address, and make your comment.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Dr. Weiss?
Yes,
Sue. Yeah, Sue.
Okay. Sue Herman, President of Residents for Regional Traffic Solutions, Inc., also known as RRTS, P.O. Box 285, Newtown, PA. These comments are about Trenton Mercer Airport, also known as TTN. After 2 failed attempts at public comment during the May 6th Board of Supervisors meeting, I texted Supervisor Lewis during that meeting. The following morning, he sent the board an email titled Additional Public Comment from last night. I asked the board tonight, was RRTS's May 7th email that was titled Urgent Request to Resume LMT's Airport Review Panel Monthly Meeting included in the public record as public comment for your May 6th board meeting? Dr. Weiss, I'm asking whether that email was put into the public record as our public comment for the May 6th meeting.
When you send your email through the servers, that's basically public record at that point. I think the airport review board is they can meet every month as they're supposed to meet, virtually, just like every other committee.
Well, my first question is, did the public comments that I emailed to you the day after the May 6th board meeting, did they become official public comments for the LMT May 6th board meeting?
I do not think it has, and I don't know if, unless you read it into the record, I don't think there is a mechanism. Dave, is there for a correspondence to be put on the record as part of the meeting after?
I mean, you can, and that's some boards and some places do have a separate agenda item for correspondence. You've already approved the minutes for that meeting, but you can always amend the minutes if you want to include that at some point. You can do it to now, if you want to do it tonight, say you want to amend the minutes to include the correspondence from RRTS to make it part of the meeting minutes in lieu of their public comment at the meeting. There's nothing that says you can't do that.
And certainly there was documentation. First of all, in my opinion, the procedure is not totally clear as to how a citizen is to speak at these meetings. And I've gone back and forth with Monica today, and she was great at clearing up the problems so that I could succeed tonight. But Supervisor Lewis got my text during the meeting, and he sent you, the Board of Supervisors, early the following morning an email saying additional public comment from last night. So I ask that you amend the minutes to include our May 7th email that's titled Urgent Request to Resume LMT's PTN Review Panel Monthly Meeting. I ask that you make that revision now.
But couldn't we just say that you've actually put it in the record for today's meeting with your comments
No,
now?
because there were a lot of things that were in those comments that we want recorded as having been stated to the board at the May 6th meeting.
I would be really uncomfortable with that, Sue, since I know John didn't get your text that evening, and although he forwarded.
He did get my text that evening, Suzanne. He got it in the evening at 11 p.m. He was kind enough to text me back to apologize for having not seen it during the meeting.
That's what I was trying to say, that he didn't get it during the meeting. He wasn't able to tell us about it until the following morning. So I'm uncomfortable saying something was part of the record for that night when we didn't become aware of it till the following day. But I'm fully happy to have you add this into the record for tonight.
Okay, then I will say that we will be attaching our May 6th public comment to this comment, to our comment this evening, and we will be sending you both in an email that you'll receive tomorrow asking you to include both as part of the public record for tonight's meeting. Does that sound good?
I mean, I'm only one, but whatever comment you want to make for tonight, you should make now. Put it into, I think, right? And then whatever, I don't know, Dave?
Okay. Dave, will you help me out here? Because we can really split hairs on this, but the issue is very important.
You make it, the record should reflect, if the board is so inclined to accept Ms. Herman's and our RTS's email and attachments from May 6th to be made part of the record of this meeting, reflecting their comments at the May 6th meeting. Are we okay with that?
Okay.
And then once you do that, when you get the minutes, and hopefully Janelle is still awake to be able to include that, and make sure we get the email to her with the attachments, and then she can include that with the minutes. So when you review the minutes at the June 3rd meeting, then you can include that as part of the approval that night.
Okay, would you mind just repeating what's to transpire for all of our benefits?
Again? I have to go through that again?
Yeah.
I think this is what I said, and if I'm wrong, I'm sure it'll be pointed out appropriately. So the minutes of tonight's meeting should reflect the fact that the email and attachments dated May 6th from you and RRTS should be made part of the record of this meeting, reflecting your comments that were submitted for the purpose of the May 6th meeting. Okay?
Okay. Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
So is that a motion? Is that a motion that needs to be passed by the board?
Unless the board members can decide whether they accept that as by consensus, is to put that in the meeting minutes tonight. And then when they get the meeting minutes on June 3rd to approve for tonight, they can see whether they're there, as long as Janelle has received the email and the attachments to include that as part of the entire record.
Does anyone?
All right, well.
Does anyone want to make that motion?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
Yeah. Can I ask Sue one quick question? Sue, I'm looking at the message that John forwarded us on Thursday the 7th.
Yes.
And I just want to make sure I'm clear as to what you make sure there wasn't anything else that I personally missed. But the message chain that I'm seeing, essentially the comment, when I count the periods there, it looks like there's only about 4 sentences, maybe 5, if my eyes are playing tricks on me, in that particular message.
From John, and then I sent him. That was John's message to you, apprising you that there was additional comment from the previous night. And then I sent, on behalf of our RTS, a May 7th email, probably within an hour and a half of his, in which I thanked him for having apprised you of the fact that he had received my text during the meeting, but didn't see it until after the meeting. And then I went on to inform you that these were the public comments that we would have read into the public record, and I asked you to acknowledge receipt of them. I got receipt from Dr. Weiss, from
James responded to you,
Dr.
correct?
Weiss, from James, and from one other person. I think it might have been Suzanne, but I'm not sure. No, from John, Dr. Weiss, and James. I got acknowledgement of receipt. And I asked that those be included as part of the public record, because I was very upset that my attempts to do public comment had not gone through and allowed me to do the comment. So I did the best I could to make another attempt. The second time I called in, the moderator didn't pick up. And so that's when I texted John.
I get you. Okay. And I
But
apologize.
indeed,
When I was searching my email, I was searching by John's name, but not by yours. That's why I was
Do we have a second?
I seconded that.
I forget. I'm sorry.
Sorry. Didn't mean to go down that rabbit hole. But yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to incorporate the email from May the 6th into
May the 7th. It was a May the 7th email to the board titled Urgent Request to Resume LNT's Airport Review Panel Monthly Meeting.
You got that motion. Thank you very much, Sue. And we have a second. Any further discussion? Any further public comment, Monica?
No further public comment.
Excuse me, I'm not done. Hello.
Oh, we have a
I'm
motion.
not done.
We have a motion.
Oh, okay.
You can.
We have further public comment. I'm so sorry. So after this, we will have further public comment.
Yeah, I understand. I'm just on this one issue. Okay, so all those in favor signify by saying aye. Raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so the minutes will have incorporated the email from the 7th of May. Go ahead, Sue. You get another minute.
Okay. And well, that was a bit of administration. So I asked you to give me a couple more minutes.
You get 2 minutes. Okay.
In our May 7th email, we urgently asked that you resume the airport review panel meeting. I emailed Supervisor McCartney on May 12th asking when the meeting would resume and haven't gotten a definitive answer. I asked the board tonight, can you give me a definitive answer as to when the airport review panel meeting will resume?
The board can't give you that information, in my opinion. That'll have to be brought up with the chair of the review panel. They're more than welcome to meet And, I'm sure that Supervisor McCartney will get in touch with the chair of that review panel, and we'll get back to you in the next couple of days to see when the next meeting will be.
We hope so. As you know, we aren't trying to shut the airport down. Bucks and Mercer County residents are becoming increasingly alarmed by continued developments in the unchecked expansion of TTN. The cumulative environmental impacts of the many segmented projects that have either already taken place or are planned have not been adequately considered, and the health, safety, and welfare of Bucks and Mercer County residents is in jeopardy. It's unconscionable that at the Mercer County Freeholders April 23rd, 2020 virtual meeting, they rubber-stamped 4 resolutions concerning TTN, ignoring grave environmental concerns that will likely cause irreparable harm to our water supply. In Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick's November 12, 2019 letter of concern to the U.S. Department of Transportation, he states, quote, considering the proximity of the wells to TTN and how quickly PFOS and PFOA contaminations bioaccumulate, it is likely that the contaminants have spread to neighboring wells and groundwater. Given the health risks associated with PFOS and PFOA exposure, it's critical that the environmental assessment for any project at TTN take these risks into account, end quote. The continued irresponsible expansion of TTN at the expense of the health, safety, and welfare of PA and New Jersey residents must be stopped. It's apparent that New Jersey politicians up through the federal level are indifferent toward the tragic consequences of their actions. Tonight, we make a call for action to the Lower Makefield Township Supervisors and to Pennsylvania politicians up the line through the federal level. We request that the LMT Board of Supervisors place this item on its agenda in the near future. We ask that during that agenda item, you A, educate residents about the toxic effects that unleashed PFOS and PFOA contamination will have on our water supply and on the health of our families. And B, that you have Pennsylvania politicians up through the federal level attend and outline the strategy for preventing such toxic contamination to our water supply. We'll submit tonight's public comment in writing, along with our May 7th email, in an email to the board, and ask that you include them in the public record for those meetings. Thank you, and may I just have the email address to whom I'm to send both sets of comments, please?
Send the comments to our township manager, who will be happy to process them to Janelle.
Okay, we sincerely hope you understand the gravity of this situation. The Mercer County Freeholders had the goal to pass those resolutions in the midst of a COVID crisis at a virtual meeting with insufficient environmental review and transparency. They are going to taint our water, and it will be too late for us to react. Please put this on your agenda. Educate us as to the toxic effects we're in for, and bring the politicians in Pennsylvania through the federal level to that meeting so they can tell us what they're going to do about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. And it might be a good idea before you hang up to send a copy of your remarks and your email to the chair of the Environmental Action Committee for the township, so we can get them involved.
Okay. Okay, very good. And just copy. Okay. Can you tell me who is the chair now of that?
It's on the website. I'm sorry, but my brain is starting to get saturated. I'm sorry.
Okay, I will check the website. Thank you.
You're welcome. Is there any other public comment, Monica?
No, our caller hung up.
Oh, okay. I'm going to skip item 17 for now and go to item 18, appointments to boards and commissions. Supervisor Grenier?
Yep. Supervisor Weiss, do you want we have several. Do you want me to do them all at once or do them committee by committee?
Why don't we do the reappointments first, and then we'll go do the applicants for the other committees.
Okay, I think I have that written down properly. If I don't, please correct me. I would like to make a motion to reappoint to the Citizens Traffic Commission, our recent caller, Sue Herman, and to the Historic Commission, Dr. Helen Hines.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Ayes have it. Reappointments made.
All right, now these are for new appointments. I'd like to make a motion to appoint to the Golf Committee, Tim Collins and Dave DeLeo. To the Sewer Authority, Scott Phillips. And to the Park and Rec Board, Kim Rock.
Second.
Mr. Lewis, second. Any discussion? Hearing none. I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
You'll relay the congratulations to the appropriate people. All right, now we can go to any other business. Is there any other business before the board? Hearing none, I will close the meeting. Thank you very much. We'll meet again on June the 3rd.
Fred, do we have to announce that we're going into executive session? I'm sorry.
So we're going to executive session first, but the open session is closed.